Community Enhancement Ad Hoc Committee, special meeting for Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. Can I get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Member Barrett is absent. Member Cole. Here. Member Hance.
Here.
Member Richer.
Here.
Member Twitchell.
Here.
Co-Chair Purrier.
Here.
Co-Chair Renner.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. First up is non-agenda items. If there's anything that anyone, and I believe we only have one person online, there's no one here present. If anyone had any comments they wanted to make, anything not on the agenda, they can do that right now. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to general business.
Certainly. So as you'll recall, we talked about meeting at our last meeting earlier in November. We talked about convening this group again next Thursday. And so since that time, we want to bring two plans back to this group, and just the ways that scheduling works. We had to create preferably a second meeting date for that, and also leave this group, this committee time to really discuss the sustainability plan on its own, try not to have that crowded out on the agenda. So we appreciate your flexibility in making time this evening and making time twice this month. We're joined by Jody Mariano from Tesca Associates to present two village plans. So the first you'll recognize from your last meeting, we've made some revisions to the South Sheridan Road landscape plan and integrate this committee's comments. I'll also note that we received two items of public comment that we distributed via email earlier today. I'm happy to go over the details of those if anyone didn't have a chance to review. After that, we'll also look over the downtown streetscape concept plan that's been looked at for a while by the Architectural Board of Review. And I'll talk a bit more about that and introduce it when we get to that point on the agenda.
Okay.
So, Jody, are you with us?
I'm here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight.
Evening.
Would you like me to go ahead and start, Glenn? Or I know Drew's in the room also. Did anybody want to say anything before I get into it?
Yeah, just again, at a high level, this is intended to be changes to the South Sheridan Road landscape plan in response to your comments. So there's, as Jody will go over, there's an additional emphasis on native plantings. There's additional bench options, a number of other changes that are described in your cover memorandum. With that, Jody, please take it away.
Super. Thank you, Glenn. And good evening again, everyone. I'm just going to make this big on my screen. So yes, from the last time that we were all together, I think November 3rd, we did some revisions. And so I've got my cheat sheet here, a couple of things, takeaways that we heard from you all at our last meeting. One was that we wanted an all native plant list. We wanted no cultivars or nativars. We wanted all straight species. There was a request that we reduce the quantity of plants shown in the plan. So you'll see that at Artesian Park. We had a good discussion about the benefits of containerized plantings versus seed. And we heard pros and cons for both. We did hear that there was a desire for containers for more immediate visual impact and to help with maintenance, establishing seed, taking more maintenance than working with containerized plantings. We looked at some bench options. We heard a request to see more, and we heard some interest in using reclaimed wood materials. We heard a request to add bike repair station and bike racks, and a request to add trash and recycling bins for dog walkers. We also heard about the lighting program that had been done by the village, and we've incorporated those materials, so you'll see those. We also discussed removing one node area at the northwest section of the area of the study area, because that was the area that tends to flood. So with that, I'm going to kind of take you through a very similar format to what we all discussed the last time. I know that you're all very familiar with the scope in the study area that we're looking at, but again, we're looking to enhance the South Sheridan Road entrance with improvements that reflect the village's corridor plan direction. These are some existing photos, and we can always come back to them if we need to refer to something within our study area. The landscape playbook references are here, of course. some more from the playbook. I'm just going to get through to the changes. So the plant list first. These are the trees that are being recommended, all straight species. We've indicated on all of the plant materials here the heights, the widths, and also the pollinators and the flower color where it's applicable. So we're looking at incorporating red oaks, common hackberry, eastern redbud, ironwood, common serviceberry. These are all materials that came out of the landscape playbook. These are things that are native and salt tolerant. We've been able to use them successfully in other similar applications.
So Jody, if I could interrupt for a second, one of the, I really appreciated the comments we got from the public. I thought they were really thoughtful and constructive. And so, for example, one comment related to the red buds. I know I have a bear of a time getting them to flourish in my yard where it just can be windy. So do you feel really confident that on a busy roadway with a lot of salt, you know, and trains, that they'll succeed there?
We think that they should be okay there. We've cited them, and we can get into that with their locations in the plan, but we've cited them in locations where they are protected by canopy trees. You know, it's an understory tree. So citing them next to a canopy tree so that they have a little bit of protection. We feel confident that they should be okay with the proper amount of maintenance.
I would say that the other one that this person identified was the serviceberry, or the amelancher. I have one. It's lasted maybe 15 years, and it needs to be replaced now. So I don't, I mean, it doesn't tolerate drought particularly well, and it isn't flourishing. And you know, the first 5 years probably great. It's up against the house, so it's out there, and it doesn't have an overstory tree or anything from that perspective. But it's leggy, and it's not lush. So personally, I don't know that we want to have to replace a shrub in 15 or 20 years.
Jody,
Right.
I have a couple of questions for you. How many red buds are we talking about?
Sure, I can get to the plan.
Okay.
We'll skip over this part then. So hang on a sec. Let me.
Sorry.
Well,
That's
I
okay.
appreciate it though, because it's going to help, I think.
Right, if it's
Okay,
not
so
many.
So the and you know what we had heard at the beginning was a desire to incorporate as many trees as we could, and so we've incorporated shade trees and understory trees. So plant list is here. We have 15 amelankers. We have a cluster of them here, which is making up the bulk of those. So 12 of them kind of, you know, as the kind of next succession down from the canopy trees that are behind it. And then we have, the other question was how many red buds. We had 13 red buds shown.
Okay.
And so there's, and I'll mention too that on the north side of Sheridan Road, we have quite a bit of canopy trees. And so we're, you know, wanting to cite trees that are understory trees so that they're compatible with the shade trees. So we've got clusters of understory trees here. So we've got 5 red buds, 5 red buds here, and then 6 of the hornbeams in this section.
I'm asking because, well, a couple of questions about the size of the trees, but it sounds like from the comments we've just heard that maybe red bud, can we get a few and see if they work instead of getting all of them all at once?
Of
And
course.
then that leads to my question about if the plants are guaranteed.
So when plantings are installed as part of, you know, public bidding processes, Intesca is scoped to produce construction documents once a plan is approved. The construction documents indicate a 1-year warranty. So if they're installed with, you know, the typical public bidding that we normally see, a 1-year warranty is kind of typical in the industry for tree plantings.
Okay. Well, just a thought is maybe we've seen questionable results with our own red buds. Maybe we don't get all of them all at once, but maybe a few, and see how they do. I don't know, it might save some money and we could learn something about them. So that's just a thought. And then the other thing that tags on to that, I guess their survivability, is water. And what's the plan for providing water? I guess not just for the red buds, but for all the trees.
Right, Drew covered some of that last time, right?
Did we?
That the park district said they would put the bags on the trees on the east side, and the maintenance. Anyway, I shouldn't say, I'm just going by memory.
The other comment that came up from the person concerned about the species was the density of plantings and just the safety on the bike path.
Right.
The only thing I would say about a phased installation or doing one and then doing more later is it will be more costly rather than getting them all at once, installing them all at once. And how long would you want to wait for them to establish before you determine the rest of them to go in?
Yes, and that leads to another question about monitoring the success. You know, how are we going to decide, well, that was a great tree for that spot, or, you know, so there has to be an installation, but then there has to be a management or monitoring ongoing, and maybe that's part of the package, I don't know. But, and I don't know if you have to buy them all at once. Does it save money if you buy them all at once, or do we have a lump sum of money that we can spend as we want to over the course of time?
No, I don't think so.
So there is a budget, there was a budget associated with a planting plan. We were fortunate, the village was fortunate to have the 125 committee that first box there, the most northern box at the intersection there. Really most of that, especially on the west side of the street, is going to be gifted to the village. So we're going to we have about $20,000 in this current year budget. Depending on when this gets to the point where we will put it out to bid, we may have more money, but right now that's the current budget plus the monies, which I think is probably close to $22,000 from the 125 committee.
I have a
So
question though, how much was the gift? You said
it's about 2022. And it's really for that area there that's in the lower part of the screen right now that you can see.
Okay.
So, so that's what they wanted to donate and dedicate. The one thing that's not shown in this drawing would be some sort of plaque to connect that gift, you know, but also would link to the other historic trails, like some sort of QCR. I mean, I said that wrong. Is that right? QR code. Thank you. Something like that to link folks to that series of walks, informational walks that the History Museum and the village have been working on together. Yeah, so big picture, the village would develop a plan. The plan would get programmed at some point, and then sometimes, as Co-Chair Renner noted, it's done incrementally or phased in, but it depends on budget, timing, and everything else that's going on. The village does have an overarching goal right now to plant a lot of trees. We're trying to work through that, and this plan is helpful in that regard. There's a number of trees here.
Does the village have the equipment and the personnel to do like a watering program? Is there one in existence already that does the streetscape and does, you know, potential other plantings, trees and stuff like that around?
Yes.
And will this be included within, this proposed area be included within their work area?
It will likely be a combination where the village would do it in-house, but be like some of these beds would probably be out-of-house help. I mean, that's something. I mean, we've got
Garden clubs,
employees that are,
volunteers, yeah.
our resources are better spent with that certain sort of skilled labor doing other things, you know, working water mains and doing other
So
sanitary.
constant monitoring and watering probably shouldn't be a main concern here. Jody, knowing that we have a lot of comments in-house about the red bud itself, knowing that you are probably the expert in this area amongst all of us, do you share those same concerns about the long-lasting life of the red bud, the maybe not the lack of hardiness, survival rates, et cetera? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, you know, every plant, every tree will always need some form of maintenance. I have lots of experience with these trees in streetscape environments. I was just looking up just to kind of confirm, but service berries are recognized as drought tolerant. I mean, I understand that that might not have been the case in, some people's personal experiences, but if we're concerned about maintenance, there are certainly other options out there. I mean, if we look back at the playbook, for instance, staghorn sumac, that is super tough, super hardy. And so if we feel like we would like to replace some or all of the understory trees with staghorn sumac and feel more confident about their compatibility with maintenance practices, we would certainly be open to that too.
I mean, I believe we have a lot of sumac in that area right now. Am I correct in that assumption? I mean, I know there's a lot of sumac along the bike path there.
There is certainly on the 176 corridor. In this general area, I think there's some, but not a lot in this particular area. But I would say, here's what I would say. You all focus on the plan.
Yeah.
We'll take care of it, right? We're not gonna, our goal is not to throw away public dollars, right? We're gonna put something in the ground and we're gonna watch it. And so I would let, Jody is, she's a landscape architect by schooling and, experience in this trade. Let her guide you and we'll take care of it.
And certainly if there was a die-off of a couple of red buds, the village would go in for those individual trees and replace them, I would assume.
Yeah, well, or if there was some specific reason that they failed, that maybe that they were, placed in a location, which again, we don't want to put something in a fail, situation to fail. But yeah, we assess things constantly. Like, what, that didn't work. Let's change it. Let's move it. Maybe push it over here. It'll be more successful. Or maybe someday there's some sort of, I don't know the specific canopy trees on that side of the street, but maybe there's some horrible bug that takes those out, and the context changes. There's no protective canopy there anymore, right? Lots of things can happen. So.
Well, they're really pretty, and they will be very protected on that eastern side. The western side, I'm not as sure, but we can see. I just think it's a wee bit risky, but they're really pretty, and they're nice understory trees, and they're native.
And the issue here, this is one of those things. I mean, this Jody and Cliff Miller put together this plan. The SEC recommended to the village board. This reflects that look and that goal. It's slightly more formalistic, slightly more. I mean, this is going to be different, and it needs to be different than the 176 corridor, because this is like on the doorstep of the downtown and our living room, right? The Village Green is a community living room. So this is the entryway, and we want this to be a little more pleasant and not necessarily planned indifference,
Pleasant is a loaded word. So
Very subjective.
It's subjective.
Yeah.
I mean, because
More
honestly,
formalized, more
like some of
formalized.
this is a little too formal almost for me, like I'd rather see it a little looser.
Yeah, and one of the concerns that was sent to us said that they'd rather have a more native-looking landscape that was not so formal. So it's kind of...
Which I think we addressed a little, I think we moved beyond containers in our last meeting and said we'd like to do more seeds than actual containers that give us that kind of wilder, more look. I know one of the comments was also, well, let's just put wildflowers everywhere all along the corridor, and then we don't have to mow, and then it's great for everybody. And it's kind of like, well, that's not really the plan that we have in mind. So while I appreciate public
But
comment,
the initial premise behind the playbook was large swaths of area. So we do want that native wildflower grasses to feel it's the primary,
It's the goal.
it's the primary image with the fence. Like that's the sort of signature.
Yeah, but it's not all formal. I mean, there's some areas like particularly we just zoomed into that area with the more sculpted looks, and that's also part of the donation to the village. So there has to be a respect to that donation as well.
Right.
So the donation was not just money, it was, I'll give you
A
the money if you
plan
have
for
a
that
plan.
plan.
Right.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, if you look at it, it's two nodes, right? This one on the lower side of the screen is at the confluence of two major, transportation areas, right? And that's why it's a little more splashy. It is, right? But by design, that's the way it's supposed to be. And as you migrate and drift away from that, it certainly gets much more natural looking, for certain.
So one question, I mean, I want to be sure that I actually have complete information to make decisions. There was a comment that there's going to be a bike station at the train station, which of course is right next door. So why would we have two.
The
So
one of
I
the-
don't know about the train.
No, that's a
station.
good question, and that's a parking station. This is actually like a repair station here.
So the other is not a repair
Correct.
station? Okay. Because I was like, those are practically next to each other, why would we do it
Yeah.
twice?
Right. Yep, different function.
And then, I mean, another good question that I just hadn't thought about is why would you park your bike on the west side? Like, that's where we're all moving. We're either heading into town, we're heading to Lake Forest, we're exercising.
Yeah.
Why would we have a bike rack on the west side?
I think it's a good call out. There are plenty of bike racks at the train station. There are also plenty of bike racks at the park
And we
currently.
want more in town and stuff, but I was just thinking, like, why would I lock my bike there? I just wouldn't.
It's not necessarily a lock, though. The reason I brought it up last time is that we're creating a rest area where you could have lunch.
Mm-hmm.
A biker could stop and rest and have a snack, and so it's not, to me, was not necessarily a secure
It's
place.
just a place to
But I
lean your
didn't want
bike.
to, I didn't want to walk past that and see people laying their bikes down on the,
Got it.
on the gardens while they rested and had
But so it
water.
would be a bike rack
Holding
light.
area, a bike holding
A
area.
bike respite.
Yes,
Yeah, that was added based off the SEC comments.
Right.
But to the point of, like, you may say that maybe bicyclists tend to travel in herds. And so the idea there may be one coming, maybe one may need to do a repair, the other two pull in, they want to set their bikes there, catch a water break. So that was the idea. It doesn't have to be there,
No,
but that
that's
was the
great.
idea.
and it
That's
doesn't have to be
helpful.
extensive
That's
amount of
helpful.
racks,
Yeah.
just enough for people to stop.
To rest, okay.
Yeah. And there may be wayfinding or other information there that they want to read about, I don't know.
Yeah,
Historical markers, learn about the plants.
yeah.
So just a place to rest their bike.
Got it, perfect, thank you.
I want to circle back to something you said, Jody, about maybe we put some staghorn sumac in the mix. What is, I'm just looking at, I like the idea. I like adding another species. Cost-wise, I mean, just a little bit more about the plant. How big does it get? How much does it cost? It sounds
The
like
staghorn
it's
sumac?
yeah. It sounds like it's a very hardy plant for this type of situation. But I just want a little bit more information about the size you get, how much it would cost, what would it look
Sure.
like full grown?
I mean, staghorn sumac are available, I think, as small as, 6 feet, maybe even 4 feet. And then, they're probably come out of the nursery, the biggest they would get. I haven't seen it bigger than 8 feet out of a nursery.
Right.
They would probably
Yeah, I don't think it'd be good.
be installed at I mean, it's going to vary with contractors, but we typically will estimate for understory trees that an understory tree is approximately $600 installed each one. That includes, all the labor and freight and soils and such. So I don't think that there's going to be a huge cost savings if we swap out a few serviceberry or amelinker for staghorn sumac. But I think it'll probably be a wash. But if it was something that was of interest because of, more variety, and it's another native, of course, we're happy to incorporate it.
Right, and all those reasons, and maybe a little insureds. If one species is taking a little bit longer or struggling a little bit, you've got some, sister or other plant next to it that's gonna kind of hold the fort.
So Marietta, I would argue actually the opposite. I'm not a fan of that plant myself. I feel like it's what flourishes when things are ignored. I don't know, it's personal bias. But maybe we have that as sort of a backup plan. If these end up not working out, then we think about that
I think we think
second
about
one.
it, and I think we think about that plant it's everywhere. And if we, another topic, want to get rid of buckthorn, that maybe if we introduce staghorn sumac as part of this whole thing is to try to educate the public about why we're making these changes and why they make sense. And so just instead of saying no, maybe keep an open mind about that, because this could be a tree or a plant that people fall in love with and say, we got a couple staghorn sumacs growing down there. If you get rid of your buckthorn, boom, pop those in, you'll get a screen, it's native, it's not gonna hurt anything. So there's another reason for including a tree like a staghorn sumac besides
Yeah,
how it might look on the road.
I think there's a lot of it on the bike path already further south. Anyway,
We can explore it.
not to have planned biases.
I think it could be a plan B, and certainly I'm not a plan expert, so I don't know, in terms of whether they fail or thrive, if there's a period like that. Like in engineering, we know certain systems, they mostly fail in the first year.
Yes.
Or they fail after 30 years. They don't fail like after 5 years. I don't know if that's the case with these kind of plantings where it would be readily apparent within 2 years or a year whether they were being established or not.
You would notice within the first 2 years if they're struggling. I think, the trees will tell you in the way that they, behave over the course of the seasons.
Okay. And we have a forester in town who could evaluate that, and I don't know if you would come back in a year to on that warranty issue to do an inspection and see how it's worked.
Yeah, we plant these trees a lot,
Okay. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and just like we were saying earlier, we've got experience with trees like this. They're salt, they're drought tolerant, they're hardy, they're native. So we don't foresee a problem with any of these.
I think the idea of a final year walkthrough is a good one with the plan. I don't know if that's actually baked into the plan, but walking through with a forestry expert. Can someone remind me of the timeline of this plan project, when we want to go to plant, when we want to start breaking ground and stuff like that?
So the idea would be to bid it in the winter and install it in spring.
Okay.
Great.
So we have a little bit of time
To,
just to, we continue, Jody, we're very thankful of your time as we continue to go through individual plant choices within this project. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we're not under the gun when it comes to, we need to approve this right now.
yeah, and in truth, full disclosure, when this first came up, the idea, some of this was, all of this, the entire corridor and the gateway plan was, the first move was beautification by chainsaw, right? Remove all the natives.
Yeah.
Or non-natives, rather.
Or the
strike that.
buckthorn.
Get rid of the buckthorn, get rid of the honeysuckle, get rid of all that.
Yep.
Then look at your palette and get to work. And some of that was the idea that, we would go out and there'd be flags, let's go put a colony of service berries, put a colony of and create these huge visual, interest of natives and create that interest next with, the longest to this plan. And so some of this, to your point, is there was the idea that there would be projects where that's done. This is a little larger span, which let's go come up with a formal plan, but there's going to be times where we may just, hey, let's come out there and stick some flags in the ground and use what's there to guide us, so.
Well, I'm very excited about this as a demonstration project for the village, to be able to say, hey, we're starting here. This could potentially expand elsewhere. Let's see how this pocket goes and see if we need to make changes for the
There's so
future.
many exciting projects coming up. I mean,
Yeah.
out by the water treatment plant, the
Yep.
plans there for
The rest of
prairie.
Sheridan Road.
I mean,
Because
it's
a lot
just-
of-
Yeah, exactly.
It's just going
Yeah.
to be an exciting time.
There are plenty of opportunities to
sure.
beautify Lake Bluff, so I'm excited to be a part of it.
I'm sorry to have you jump ahead, but you can jump back again to the
Sure.
presentation to highlight the additional changes.
No, I thank you. Absolutely. This is helpful. And you guys have seen all this before, so we don't mind jumping around. Okay, so we talked about the trees. The understory materials are here. And again, we've identified, the colors and the flower colors and such. But we heard that there was a desire to keep the heights of these things low, especially for the areas where kids are walking near artesian parks. So nobody will be blocked by tall plants. So the shrubs that we're looking at are the New Jersey tea and the dwarf bush honeysuckle, and the shrubs, grasses and the grasses and perennials rather, the nodding onion, the eastern columbine, the butterfly milkweed, wild geranium, and then we've got prairie dropseed and switchgrass in there as well. I will say that what was recommended in the playbook and also what is recommended here in the plan is that we don't have planting beds coming all the way up to the edge of the pavement. It's really important that we maintain like a 3-foot mow strip of mown lawn. What that does is that keeps the mulches and the soils from spilling out onto the pavements and onto the bike path, and it keeps everything kind of, hemmed in. This was the exact same arrangement that was identified in the playbook, and we'd recommend it here. Even though these are salt and urban tolerant, that mow strip also helps just provide a little bit of buffering from the roadway. So keeping all the plants kind of intact. So the trail amenities, we talked about most of these the last time. We did add this bike repair station as was requested. The split rail fence, the intent is to match the existing 2-rail fencing that's out there. The bike racks. So we've spent a lot of time with the ABR in the downtown plan, and I know we'll get to that in a little bit, but spent a lot of time talking about bike racks. The ABR is recommending a bike rack for downtown that looks like this. It's a movable bike rack. They wanted to have flexibility to move it around to also accommodate more bikes. As far as the bike rack that we would envision in this section here at the South Sheridan Road area would be something like a simple U rack like shown here. The trash and recycling bins, this is the downtown standard. For the trash bins in the downtown streetscape, we're recommending matching the same downtown bin for the recycling bin and just adding a simple recycling sign so that people understand that it's for recycling and what can be recycled in it. As far as benches go, last time we looked at a couple of options. We looked at some here, the precast concrete, things that look like, pebbles or, more sculptural items that maybe wouldn't look like a bench when they're not in use, would just look like sort of a piece of art along the corridor. And we heard that folks didn't love that as much, that people were cottoning more towards benches that had a reclaimed wood component to them. So we wanted to offer up a few options here. Last time we looked at these two, we looked at A and B. These are available as wood products or recycled lumber, which is essentially a plastic type of a product, or just a wood product. These are some other options here, C and E and F. These are other products that are available by manufacturers. I will say this item F, this uses a reclaimed thermally modified ash tree in the US, so it's sourced right out of the US. This is in downtown Wilmette. And then item D, these are benches that we've worked with a local, they're like tree guys in Skokie, that these were also fallen ash trees at Northwestern's campus in Evanston, and these just get milled down. And they're 18 by 18 by 6 feet long. So they get, treated with a coating of oil to help preserve them, but you can see they, start to crack and wear over time. So I'll take a pause because I know the bench question is a big question. There's a lot of different looks out there. We heard interest for reclaimed materials, but I'm just curious what y'all think about these.
So the spot is sort of semicircular, so, right, that part just a little west on the west side. So would something like F work where it could sort of match the curve?
Oh yeah, it could. I mean, this bench item F is available as a straight bench or as a curved bench. So certainly it could work.
What about C?
C could work as well. The cool thing about C is that it kind of turns the wood, the timbers on their end. So it has kind of a chunkier look. I will say too, the thing I like about C is that you have a backless and a backed component to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
That's
say a
cool.
backrest would be welcome.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot.
But then, there's a lot of kids there too, and I could see them on the backless part, sort of back to back, on either
Sure.
side of it. So I'm with you, like I need a back support, but it would be a lot of kids there in that location.
Yes.
I mean, I do like C and F, that concept, but I'm open to.
Do we have any sort of idea of what the lifespan of these benches might be? Typically, I know A and B being more plastic materials, probably anywhere from 50 to 80 years. The reclaimed wood is probably, D, as you said, is already cracking. Yeah, I like C as well. I like the idea of having a backless and a back, and especially a wide bench so that people could potentially lie down if, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
they
good
got
point,
tired
too.
and wanted to take a nap, or, you know, had a car accident right at the pedestrian crossing.
Well, you know, the cool thing too, we could consider if we like C, for instance. Well, so for instance, F is actually two benches placed side by side. C is a very long bench broken up into segments, but we could consider doing something like that to kind of make this very bold, continuous statement, because we have the space for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be two separate standalone benches, but they could be one long element similar to this one that's pictured here.
I'm trying to think of other elements within the village that might match this kind of aesthetic, and I'm a little hard pressed.
Could be starting a new
so.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yes, new aesthetic. Glenn,
New
did you-
Well, and you know,
Glenn?
I think,
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Glenn, you had a comment?
yeah, and we will be referencing other things that are, you know, like the trash recycling, the black metal that you see in other parts of downtown. But, you know, we're sort of in a different environment here. We've got these, you know, big, thick, chunky split rail fences that, you know, we're wanting to replicate. And so in some ways, I think we could make a slight departure and incorporate a different kind of a bench in this area.
And
So
you know,
Jody, I have a question for you. Is there a big difference in price between these benches?
Between C and F, you mean?
Well, just any of them. I mean, you know,
I
for
mean, I'll
shopping,
say-
we ask how much it costs.
Of course, yeah. I mean, so the two on the left, A and B, are probably the lowest cost of the group. D is pretty as low as you're just paying for
Sure.
labor, really. C, E, and F are probably all pretty similar. I mean, typically for a bench like this, we would estimate about, you know, around $3,000-4,000 per bench for a 6-foot bench.
It's not as bad as I
That's
thought it
not
was
bad.
gonna
I
be.
thought it would be worse.
Especially depending on how long it's gonna last. And we don't have an extensive amount of bench, like, it's not going on and on.
I mean, we really like using the locally sourced ones like this one F. I'd have to double check where they're, I'm pretty sure this wood is locally sourced too, but you know, it's thermally treated. And so it's as durable as the woods that come out of the rainforest, but you just hate to do something like pulling wood out of the rainforest for
No,
a project like
no.
this.
I get one question, let Glenn jump in here too.
Yeah, so just for the group to think about as we're discussing this, right? You know, a general design principles, right? There's always a balance between, let's call it making a statement and let's call it being reproducible, right? In a town like Bluff, I would think preferably you'd want no more than 2 types of benches, right? You'd want an urban bench like what we have in the downtown, which is like an iron look. That's the same thing used in the parks right now in a different color. And then perhaps in areas like this, you'd want a more rustic or a more, you know, natural looking bench. I say that only to say that, you know, in an ideal world, right, just efficiency speaking, you know, we don't end up with 10 different benches and 10 different installations. We don't even have a bench conversation next time. Just the next time we do one of these plans, I take F and we plop it there and that's it. So just something to think about in terms of
Our decision has weight
designs.
here, is what you're saying.
it is a small but important precedent.
Implications for the future.
But yeah, I agree, we shouldn't have more than 2 or 3 different types of benches, so.
Well, I personally like C, so long as it's reclaimed wood.
You know,
Seconded.
Good to know. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, super. I'll keep moving along. We talked about the tree plan. So this is the Sheridan Place. You know, we've got these 2 enlargements. So we talked about Artesian Park crossing, and then we've also got the Sheridan Place crossing here. So at Sheridan Place crossing, we've identified these planting arrangements, and the planting arrangements are pretty similar in that we've got, you know, shrub massings up against the backs of the benches, and then we've got the prairie drop seed, the low grass plantings to kind of, provide that edge. And then we've got the mixture of flowering perennials kind of popping in and out in between. And so to the comments that were made earlier, it is a little bit formal. It's not so haphazard, but that's also intended so that it feels like you're actually arriving in a special place, to, kind of provide some color and some interest and to keep things, maintainable. So you're seeing also the line around the perimeter, and that indicates the edge of the planting bed. And then we would have, the mown lawn or the lawn areas surrounding it. We've got the bike path lighting project indicated here, a couple of benches, and then the trash and recycling shown here on a concrete pad next to the lighting.
So those benches could be the same material as the one we were talking about before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we've just shown typical 6-foot benches, but if we like the curved bench, I think that would really soften this up quite a bit and feel really nice here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think F would look really great there.
Yeah.
How about signage? Jody,
That
is there
was
going to
my
be
big-
signage about the names of the plants? Because I
Botanical
think it's yeah, I think it's really exciting to have, this whole native plant, native seed concept being introduced, by the village. It really makes a strong statement, and it would be nice to enhance that with some signage.
Yeah, I think it's kind of
Absolutely.
a good idea to almost advertise what we're planning, as this is supposed to be kind of a new step into planting more native plants. It's a good idea to tell people what's there, what you're looking at, and then also maybe people can make recommendations in the future as to what plants they liked and what they might like to see more of.
Well, we did that in Washington Park.
Yes, teaching part, yes.
It's a teaching park, and what's nice is you can say all of these plants flourish in Lake Bluff. You can plant them in your own garden and take a picture with the sign next to it, so you remember where it was. And, down the road, we're thinking QR codes, so someone could really latch onto more information about that specific plant.
I mean, they have free plant ID apps these days where you can just take a
Yes,
picture
yes,
of it.
I know they do, but it's kind of, I've had mixed success with that, actually.
But a lot of those give you some choices, or like, we think it's this, and so for us to say this is what it is.
That's right.
And then,
Or sometimes it's just not right, but
Yep.
the question is, it would be really cool, and the signs we have down in Washington Park, it would be nice to use that same.
Standardized, yep.
Standardize the signage for anything we plant in town.
No, it's nice.
That
Yep,
could be a nice Lake Bluff signature.
yep.
I
It's a
just
great idea.
precautioning the use of QR codes requires some sort of digital destination that we would then
Yes,
have
I
to
know.
create. So,
Yep, yep.
more cost, more, I'm just
I
calling
know,
it out.
I know.
I'm
It's
just
kind
calling
of a
it out.
flashy thing. I just like the words
Yep.
and a plant.
Yeah, me too. I like the
and a
simple
picture.
signage.
I don't know, maybe it can link to something at the Botanic Garden. Maybe they've already developed some, so that we don't have to create the content, but we just link it to,
Do they have that, Jody?
I don't know.
Meaning if you log on to you know which one I use all the time? Botanic might, but I always use the Missouri Botanical Gardens because they have such a fabulous database.
Yes, they do.
There, so
That's a
it could be
real-
that instead of
that's a
us
real good
maintaining
one.
anything.
Right, because it's going to evolve over time, and so you could just update it digitally, right? Is that what
I
you're
mean,
saying?
is that confusing
I'm
that
saying
we're
let
linking?
it link to somebody else's digital content.
Okay, all
But
right.
is it confusing that not only is it not linked to a Lake Bluff Village destination, but a Missouri one as well? People might be like, well, wait a minute, I'm not in
Thought
Missouri.
this was an Illinois
Yeah,
native.
exactly. I'm in Illinois. This
I
must
know.
be the wrong
Yeah.
destination. These people have no idea what they're doing. You know, like how
Missouri
can I
is one
trust
of the
this?
top botanic gardens in the country. It's not only Missouri focused.
Oh no, I get that. I'm
But-
It could just take you to Pasquazi's for a shopping list.
add to
There you go.
cart. Yeah.
Or, yeah, order
And fill
this
your
here.
basket.
Or, there could be a human element to this.
We'll
Like,
take bids.
here's the plant, here's the sign, think Washington Park. And then if you have questions, call someone, call, whoever, so that there's really a person that you can talk to and learn from.
Call Brian.
Instead of just always
call
doing,
Call
the
Marietta.
electronic.
No, that's, and certainly, I would agree that, again, standardization, using the same text, the same style, I think that would it can be easily incorporated into this.
Yeah, because we're trying to do down in Washington Park is to relate the plants to people.
Yeah.
So if you have a question, call someone in the garden club.
Yep.
You know, we're gonna
No, and even,
I don't know if anyone's
explode.
If anyone's been down to the Green Bay Trail near Glencoe, they've been clearing buckthorn also and replanting with natives. And so they also have just a very simple branded informational sign that just describes what they're doing. And so you could also just consider something like that. And then, you know, maybe it's a link to a QR code to the village's website. And there could be a web page that talks a little bit more about it too.
yeah, I don't know if you have to even decide this detail tonight, right? That can be done later,
No.
right? Yeah, so.
I do want to be cognizant of time because we have a large other plan to go through, which we haven't seen and discussed before. So just out of,
That's good to know.
you know. So
Yes.
further comments? We'll go.
No, I mean, I don't have a constructive thing
Just
to say.
destructive?
I mean, well, no, I mean, as Marina knows, we've worked on a big recycling project, so the concept of having two containers that look the same and one's just labeled recycling, I don't think it'll work. I don't have a better solution. I mean, visually, I like the consistency. I just think you're gonna get a lot of mix and all that recycling is gonna end up going in the landfill. But,
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit because what we found has been effective is to have decals or signs on the sides of the bins, but also on the top.
Yeah.
Because you're right,
Yeah.
and you know, but you do have to differentiate it. Some communities will differentiate it with color. In the streetscape plan, you know, it was determined to, you know, match it closely with the same black color, but I think that's where we would need to do even more with decals and signs to be, you know, really hit people over the head with it so they understand what's what.
yeah,
We'll have a moment to comment on the downtown plan in a minute.
I was just
I
going to
had a
ask,
lot of questions.
Yes.
I was just going to ask the one question. When you go back to the little grid, the split rail fence is within the, yeah, that's fine. No,
One more.
You just want to know
Park.
where the
the
split.
split rail fence is within the little eggs.
Yeah, they
on
seem
Sheridan
very
Place?
And
little.
I was, yeah, on Sheridan Place and anywhere else, frankly, and I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't you want to have the split rail fence on your corner so that people don't cut the corner because we're enhancing a pedestrian space? I'm just thinking that it becomes a barrier, not just a,
I think at this point it's more decorative than functional, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I
But
can,
I'm
I can show,
wondering-
I can highlight those. I mean, so we have these planting beds. This is Artesian Park. And so the split rail fence is in the middle of it. So we've got shrubs on one side and we've got the perennials and flowers and grasses, I mean, on the other side. So the split rail fences are part of that kind of planting assembly. So it's that double line that sits in the middle here.
Yeah.
And that came from the landscape playbook that it was, you know, the kind of the split rail fence would sit in between the plantings so that it was kind of part of, you know, the overall look.
I'm just thinking that it should be on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of that more as in those big swaths of grasses and flowers, and it would be sort of parallel with the road, but I don't know.
The
It's
other thing is
beyond my
that the
skill.
split rail fence in the garden is going to encourage people to get
Kids
into
are
the
gonna wanna
garden
climb
and
it.
climb it.
That's what I was gonna
Exactly.
say,
Or
especially with the little eggs right outside the middle school.
Oh.
I was just in the middle school a few years ago, and the kids will,
Climate.
yeah, if they see something bright and colorful, they're gonna climb in it. It's like with the ice rink, every single winter, there's like 5 kids who go and stomp on the barely formed ice and like fall in. And I think that's exactly what they would do with those.
And you weren't one of
flowers.
them, thankfully.
It's an attractive
See,
nuisance.
you know, Drew, this reminds me, this came up back in 2019, I remember that. And wasn't it the Public Works guys? And I happen to agree, you know, when you've got a split rail fence on the edge, that means you have to mow around it, you've got to trim the grass around it. It's more labor intensive than I think what's been designed here, which is you have it in the middle of a bed.
Yeah.
And the mow edge is just simple.
I
This is a
think you're
design
recalling it correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that came out of the playbook. I'm gonna go back to the original playbook here.
Yes, that's the picture. Yeah,
Here, I mean, this image I think is probably the best, but
yeah.
you can see, so yeah, just like you said, split rail fence in the middle, planting bed around it, mown lawn kind of in between.
Keeps it real simple.
from
Just keeps it as one unit, so,
Yes.
you know, mowing around it will be simpler. We don't have mulch or soils washing onto the street or the bike path.
And like Jody said, this is a bit of a pilot, right? We haven't done this, right? So we'll learn from it, right?
It's really
I do
exciting.
think it's fundamentally different along the broad swath part, as opposed to like right where the kids are hanging out waiting for the crossing guard. But, I mean, it's an experiment, but the kids are gonna climb it.
I mean, I think with those shrubs and bushes
off the
in there,
fence.
they're acting more as like less as, you know, these fences are not functional fences. They're more design elements that are meant to encapsulate those bushes, so.
But if you've got those nice benches there too, right? Don't we have benches there?
Yeah.
I think the kids,
Well,
the
Oh,
kids.
not
will-
on the east side.
not on the east side, yeah.
On the west side only.
But I think it'll be a nice learning process for us to see
Yes.
who can predict children's behavior. Not I, and I have 2 of them.
Sometimes.
Or
when you're-
adults.
I don't know, I had a lot of boys.
Yeah.
Can predict pretty well.
They'll climb, no wonder they're gonna climb on everything. Yeah.
Sometimes when you do these plans too, I mean, it's really a question of, you know, how bad is the worst case? I mean,
Yeah.
You know, kids climb on the War Memorial, which is
Yep.
6 foot tall and stone, you know, what's the worst
Desecrating.
that happens with a
Yeah.
4 foot tall split rail, right?
True, that's true.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if there isn't a fence, there's still a chance that they're gonna like walk in the flowers or like ride their bikes through them or whatever.
Yeah.
There's not really anything we can do to completely prevent that.
Right, and
Except maybe
dogs,
stick a
let's not
fence
even
in
get
the
started
middle of
on the doggies. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I had 2 last comments before we conclude on this. I'm going to ask a dumb question because I'm not a plant expert like some of the people on the committee. Are any of these plants hazardous to dogs?
No,
Okay.
and I appreciate you asking. I mean, there are some plants out there that are hazardous to animals and young children, but no,
Okay.
none of these.
And then the last question I just put out to the committee, we have those recycling stations there, or the waste and recycling. I'm just going to toss out there, in some of the parks, we have dog waste bag stations.
Yes?
Yes.
Would anyone, on the one hand, I think it would be helpful because a lot of people walk their dogs on that path. On the other hand, it's not that attractive.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, and there's whoever
what's-
has to
what's-
empty the
What
doggy-
those will encourage are full dog waste bags going into the garbage cans right there.
Okay.
So
Oh, you're right.
I think,
But that's what's
Well,
gonna
they will-
be
they will happen
90%.
anyway.
It's gonna happen
Any
anyway.
garbage
Well-
can on the bike path is 90% dog poop.
yeah,
I mean, that's what's in there.
yeah.
You know that.
Really? I mean, yes. People,
Wow.
that's what people do. You walk your dog and
The closest one right now is in Artesian to this location, right, in terms of the
Right,
little.
because you don't want to take
mitts.
it all the way another
Yeah.
mile home and,
because you have to go much further south to get garbage cans
yeah.
as
So
a dog walker.
I'm fine without it being there, but because the garbage cans would actually be helpful for people picking up their dogs, I think.
Can we compost the dog poop?
It's,
they
they
say
go in
no.
biodegradable
No,
bags.
No?
I don't
No,
think
you
so.
can't.
You can't, unless it's a biodegradable, but you don't want a
It's,
dog.
yeah,
Compost.
you don't want that stuff
As
going
a whole.
anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think people would probably really appreciate the dog thing.
Yeah.
I think they probably really would.
Okay, maybe it's something you can consider, and I don't know if there's nicer looking ones than the ones we have around town, but might be worth at least the idea of it, looking into it.
Then
It sounds
you also,
thoughtful, really thoughtful.
And then the last comment I had was I'll talk about bike racks when we get into the downtown plan.
I'm waiting for that.
So if you are done, you could
Okay.
make a motion to recommend this plan with the comments provided.
Yeah, would anyone like to make a motion to approve with the comments discussed tonight?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, roll call?
Certainly, Member Cole,
Aye.
Member Hance,
Aye.
Member Richer,
Aye.
Member Twitchell,
I,
Co-Chair Purrier,
Aye.
and Co-Chair Renner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, this is like 2 for 1. So let me pull up another one.
So
Here we go.
Jody, while you're switching over, a brief
Yep.
introduction. So the village board, at their direction, staff retained Jody to also work on a comprehensive streetscape plan for the central business district. As you may recall, there is a construction project underway right now on Block 2. That was really a road reconstruction project that had been scheduled for some time, as well as some sidewalk upkeep, things like that. And we went a bit further in making some important improvements to the streetscape that necessitated a planning process at that time before the project was bid. And one outcome from that process was the need to have a refreshed streetscape plan for the central business district. So the last one of these was done in the mid-2000s. Parts of it have been implemented. It's really, other parts shouldn't be implemented. It's kind of reached its life, and so it's important, again, for us as staff to have direction going forward on the improvements we'll make to our streetscape in downtown as we keep working on these different parts. So the goals of this process: elevate pedestrian safety, preserve existing trees, maximize the utility of the current public parking inventory, bearing in mind that that's been a habitual area of interest for our merchants, our restaurants, and enhance user experiences for users of the central business district, of which there are many, as Jody will talk about. So a couple notes here to keep in mind. So process-wise, this was charged by the village board to the architectural board of review that shepherded these past processes along. That board's concluded their work and they've made their recommendation. What we're doing is bringing this plan last night, to a new business advisory group, and tonight to the sustainability group to get additional feedback that will go to the board when they consider adopting this plan here, perhaps in a couple weeks. The second thing I would think about is there are no boundaries on your conversation tonight. You're welcome to talk about anything at the intersection of this plan and your scope, right, your purview. A couple things that do stand out. One, as co-chair Renner already pointed out, is bike racks. The ABR has made a recommendation of a specific bike rack that already exists in downtown today. The SEC has previously made different recommendations, and so there are pros and cons to that we can discuss. And the second, as has been pointed out also, is trash and recycling bins. How many to have, what's the right balance, to some extent, how should they look? Both of those issues are specifically called out in your sustainability plan. I'm sure, there will be other connections we identify along the way. So.
Yeah, I want to add that we're respectful of the work that the architectural board has done here, and that most of you have already reviewed some of these plans. I want to say how much great effort's gone into them. I understand that we need to understand that we may have different perspectives in the architectural boards, and it's up if we make recommendations which deviate from the plans or are contradictory to maybe something the architectural board came up with. That's ultimately something we just pass on to the village board with our recommendations and for them to consider in the final end of things. So I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this plan, and I'm glad that the committee here is going to have a chance to look at it through a sustainability lens and through our criteria and plan that we have for the village. So. With that, shall we start?
Great. Thank you all. So that was, a better introduction than I could have provided. I think I would just add one minor thing, which is, streetscapes are living, breathing things. They're never fixed, no matter what. And what I've found to be the most successful in our experience with downtown streetscapes is just to get the basic geometry and the infrastructure right so that communities and businesses can kind of continue to put their thumbprint on it. So if it means testing different bike racks over time or testing different trash and recycling bins over time, there's room for all of that. So with that, I'll kind of take you through. This is the same presentation that was made to the village board in November. It looks at the study area, the goals, the timeline, what we heard from the public outreach, gets into the plan recommendations, and then we've got budget costs. So Glenn already touched on the goals here. The study area is the entire downtown from the metro station to Evanston Avenue to the east, and also from Center Avenue at the south up to the north side of North Avenue. So we know we've got these 4 blocks. We also have the Village Green, which is an important piece of the downtown. Our process has included having a very active web page. We had a community poll. We participated in the farmers market, and some of you were out there with us. We met with the ABR twice in October and also in November, and then we presented to the village board before the holiday, and you know, we have another presentation coming up to the village board here this month. And there's Marietta in her bright pink shirt. But we had a really great time at the farmers market. We had folks that joined us and participated in all sorts of activities. We really spent a lot of time and effort up front to get as much input as we could. I think one of the things that we heard a lot was Lake Bluff is such a great place. It doesn't need too much. Don't screw it up. We want to, you know, keep what we love about it, but, you know, enhance it a little bit. We had over 10,000 views of the e-news that went out weekly with updates about the streetscape. We have a project webpage on the website with over 3,600 views and over 8,600 views of the social media. We had a community poll that was very well attended, especially given the relatively small size of Lake Bluff. Almost 800 people responded to the poll. And in addition to the responses, we had always room for individual comments. We had over 1,000 individual comments. So a lot of interest. And you can see all of the summaries of these materials on the website, or on the web page rather. The farmers market. Oh, does someone have a question?
No.
I think I heard something.
No.
At the farmers market, we asked questions about, you know, what's out there today. That's great. What else should be improved upon? We had opportunities for people to make selections on the types of amenities they'd like to see in downtown. And then we just had an open-ended board where people were, you know, able to tell us anything and everything that they had to say about the streetscape. Some excerpts from the poll. It's a really interesting downtown, as you know. It's a very balanced downtown. It has visitors all times of day and evening and weekends and weekdays. It's something that was very interesting was we asked how people typically travel here, and a huge portion of folks come here by foot or on bike. This is not as much of a driving destination as other downtowns that we see. This really is a neighborhood serving town. And so we want to make sure we keep this pedestrian friendly as well. We asked where people park when they drive. You know, on street gets the most votes. Not as many people use the metro station parking lot, which was interesting to us, considering it has so many spaces. It is on the other side of Sheridan Road, but it seems to be an untapped resource. So something that we, you know, heard a lot about in the outreach. We asked what kinds of experiences and events bring people to downtown, existing experiences as well as potential new ones. And the things that ranked the highest are circled here, but people love outdoor dining. They love the farmers market, the parade, concerts, block parties, all ranked really high. And I think this all just kind of reinforces that this is, you know, this very special neighborhood downtown. I've never seen another downtown like this. It's really very, it's very special. We asked a question about what's been going on in Block 1. So we spent a lot of time at the farmers market talking to people about Block 1, how it has been temporarily shut down to two-way traffic. It has one-way westbound with the balance of the road being used for outdoor dining tents, like many communities have done during COVID. So we consider that to be a flexible streetscape because it has this temporary use. During the farmers market, we heard almost unanimously that people really liked it, but they felt like it should look nicer, and they understood it was a temporary measure, but what can be done to make it more beautified? When we asked if, in the poll, how people felt about doing things like this in the future, we had overwhelmingly 82% supported this flexible streetscape function. We asked folks to rank the streetscape amenities that were most important to them. Outdoor cafes, benches and seating, landscape plantings, and lighting enhancements ranked the highest. And then, you know, when we took a step back and looked at all of the outreach that was done, we tried to sum it up into 10 points here. And so I'm going to try and get through it. But basically downtown is special. It's it's got a very small town feel. It's got a New England feel. Anything that's done should be in keeping with that character and scale. Some of these things are in quotes because they are direct quotes from people that told us. Community comfort and safety are words that describe the downtown. And so making sure that we maintain a traffic calmed experience and pedestrian environment is something that was important. We heard about existing gems in the downtown, things that make the downtown really special, like Scranton Alley, the Village Green, the fountain at Village Hall. People like this idea of seating nooks. And so if there were opportunities to incorporate more of them tastefully, people would like to see that. People really liked the Block 1 improvements, the one-way traffic and the dining areas, but it should be formalized, it should be beautified. Make better use of the parking that we have. So especially all that parking that seems to go unused at the metro station and even in some of the parking lots, doing things like improved visibility and signage and accessibility to balance out the parking supply and get more use for those things. Making the streetscape flexible so that it supports things day to day, but also special events and fests. So things like accommodating access to power, curbless street sections, we'll talk a little bit about that. Sidewalks that are unobstructed. We heard a lot of comments about sidewalks feeling too cluttered and wanting to keep them clear and open. And then providing opportunities for movable seating so that people have an opportunity to make their own spaces, their own places to sit. And we heard a lot about seating that was not necessarily associated with a business, but truly public seating. So you didn't have to be patronizing a business to sit outside. The amenities should reference the existing streetscape. So this is why we're trying to match existing trash bins, for instance, and also be comfortable for people to use. Sustainability was something that was very important in the materials that are selected and the methods by which downtown is maintained. Greenery and seasonal decor were important. And then of course the comment that I mentioned before, don't change it too much. It's really beautiful and lovely today. We looked at some issues and opportunities with the ABR early on. It's a small downtown, but it also has a lot of different characters. So, looking at how people are entering, if they are visitors, they tend to enter from Sheridan Road or from Scranton Avenue. If they're coming from the neighborhoods, they tend to be coming from the north and the east, from the neighborhood areas. We have these green areas that we call residential streets because they have the green parkways. This red area here is what we would call the shopping and dining street. These are streets that don't have green parkways. They're full sidewalks. They have trees on them, but they function to support the businesses. And then we have these opportunities that we, looked at, this sort of like 100% corner that is like an outdoor community living room. We also started to focus a little bit on the park edges. Village Green is special. We don't want to change it too much, but these edges are where there already seem to be these collections of things like benches and water fountains and seat walls. And are there ways that we can formalize that to make it a more useful, activated park edge? So the concept plan, overall, I'm going to take it by block, but this is the overall concept. So I'm going to go through each of these blocks. I'm going to save block 1 for the last because it is probably the most complicated one. Block 2 here is the block that's under construction, just like Glenn mentioned. So Scranton Avenue is being constructed between Oak and Walnut, and also a piece of Center down here is under construction. We identified planning principles for each of these areas. So some of these overlap, but for block 2, it was about maximizing the on-street parking, keeping the sidewalks clear and free of clutter, protecting the existing trees, and then adding new trees where we can, incorporating flexible outdoor public seating, so seating that's just for the public, not for businesses necessarily, making sure the crosswalks are high visibility, and then we've honed in on this area near the library and history museum as a potential for a seating nook. So I've got an enlargement coming up later on that we could look at that. Also, this little area here where the existing dancer statue and planting bed is under construction to be reconstructed as a larger seating area with plantings around the perimeter. I will mention something about the plantings here. When this is reconstructed, it is specified to go back as just simple sodded lawn in these green areas, just as a temporary cover so that when budgets are available, native plantings can go back in those spaces. But you will see sodded lawn is the planting for the near term. So the plan is shown here. We've got this bump out here in front of Innovasi. And as I mentioned, this will be a widened sidewalk area with an opportunity for movable tables and chairs. This thin red line is a seat wall to match the masonry seat wall that's at Village Hall. All of the dark colored trees are new trees. All the light colored trees, no, other way around. All the dark colored trees are existing trees. All the light colored trees are new trees. We have a bump out also here at Bluffington's with spaces for a couple of bike racks and planting beds as well. This is a view looking, if you're standing here at the intersection of Scranton and Center, looking east, and so you can see these masonry seat walls. We also have these overhead festoon string lights in these areas. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 poles.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
What happened to the dancing girls?
The dancers are in storage at Lake Bluff Public Works.
And are they coming back?
One of the task is where can we find the right home for them? And it could be on the trail, it could be somewhere else, but that's part of the conversation that'll be determined with input from you all.
And I just want to add, the Lake Bluff Garden Club donated that statue to Village of Lake Bluff. And it's a significant work of art.
Yes, it is.
Which
And it's
I never knew,
a local
really.
artist. It's
Yes.
McMahon's.
McMahon.
Yes, yes.
Like she, one of the
Very, very
girls.
accomplished, yeah.
Yeah, very, very accomplished, and we are lucky to have it, and it should be featured. It shouldn't be locked away for long. Margot.
100%
Margot,
agree.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I talked with, Mariani's, Craig Bergman's taking care of that bed as a gift for a long time. And so before it was removed, I talked with him and we talked about perhaps somewhere on the bluff, on that grassy area there, so you see it silhouetted against the lake.
Oh.
But that's for the spring, and we know it's safeguarded at Public
Yeah,
Works.
and we've also talked about, and there's other communities on the North Shore that have pathways like ours that become sculpture parks. There's different places that we can build on that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful statue.
Sorry.
Oh, yes?
Also, relating to the statue, which I believe the one right outside Innovasi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that statue is surrounded by all these plants, right? So with this new seating area for restaurants, would we still have room for all those plants to be there? Because I think that was kind of a nice addition. Or would there be somewhere else that we could still have, plants like that?
Absolutely. It's a lovely planting bed. The unfortunate thing about this space is that it's sort of the inverse. It doesn't provide for accessible walking if you're coming across here. And so everything that's green is a planting bed. And so the long-term vision is that the same kinds of plantings that we see in the planting area, or what was in the planting area in that area previous, could come back to the perimeters. And the idea is that you would be sitting in the center and you'd have your plantings surrounding you. So you have a little bit of buffering from the street. The plantings should be low so that, people can still have good views and cars can see out and around, but low plantings that are ideally native and salt tolerant, similar to what we're talking about for Sheridan Road, not taller than 3 feet at mature height. Would be ideal for this area. But because of budgeting, I just want to make sure that I was clear. The thing that goes back after construction is done is just going to be lawn. We've specified to have a 24-inch deep soil profile of a planting soil mix, and then sodded lawn is just going to cover that up just to protect it, so that when budgets are available, new plantings can be installed.
Couldn't we have wheat?
I mean, sod's expensive too, isn't it?
Yeah,
Wouldn't-
and it
couldn't we
needs to be
Do
mowed.
something
it-
attractive for less money than
So,
sod?
no, and well, so the point, I think the ABR, beyond the budget issue, but there was also the issue, the ABR wanted to go slow with this, like, let's live with it for a while, and the board's talked about that, let's experience it and say, okay, where do we else want to invest in this? Because the idea of the comment about, it's pretty good now, let's not, let's not go overboard, and the ABR had that was a reoccurring theme, it's like, you know what, we don't want to go make it so busy, that's not what we're about. So that was part of this vision. But like if you go out there today, other than the planter bed for the dancer, the rest is turf. I mean, that's what's really there, turf and trees. That's what's been there historically.
Well, and a lot of dirt where the grass isn't really growing under the trees.
From overuse. and right, that's a problem, a good problem, right? People are down there, so very active areas. So that she'll get to that block where we cure
I
that.
guess we are just accustomed to color there between the
Yeah.
garden club containers and that, so.
The only thing I would mention, having been on the village board for a long time and been a resident for a while, is that I remember the downtown before we did anything with it at all. And when we started looking at things, people said, it's fine the way it is, why do you want to change it? When we wanted to put sidewalks in for pedestrian access in certain neighborhoods, why do you want to change this? It's fine, don't do this.
That's
So-
always the reaction. No,
So
no.
take it with a grain of salt when people say, don't, it's fine. When we're coming up with these plans and we have the opportunity, maybe not the budget, but we have the opportunity to make these improvements now, let's be willing to be a little bold and take some chances. Because I would say the opposite, that if someone didn't like, these kind of plantings, well, we can talk about doing something less later, rather than doing something more and the plan gets lost 5 years from now.
Well, and sod is kind of the antithesis of what our committee is.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, there's
our goal.
a wheat that my daughter, I just asked if she'll answer, daughter-in-law planted, that is super tolerant, doesn't need to be mowed, it's just there, it's about 8 inches high, and it's no maintenance.
Fescue?
I think it's a fescue, but I thought it was a wheat, actually.
Oh,
It
wheat.
could be a fescue.
Like a winter wheat.
Yeah,
But I think your point is there something between a full
Sod,
native landscape plant
because
and
it's,
sod
it's holding the soil, it's not depleting it. Anyways, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
To have something, yes, it would be green, no, it doesn't require a blower or a mower.
Right. We have buffalo grass at home. That works really well.
But
It's
does
new.
it capture garbage, knowing that there's a lot of paper products and stuff? I mean, I think it's a minor amount of sod right there. I like this idea of, okay, let's see how this project looks first before we start making other decisions on top of it.
But it's something you
grass-
just sow.
Grass is.
It's just
yeah.
seed.
It's just seed.
It
the
comes up
fescue.
in 3 weeks and it's boom, it's done.
Yeah,
I don't know if that could happen. I mean, sod, you can roll out sod now.
I know.
Yeah, it's
I know.
timing, right?
but you're not gonna, are you gonna sod it next week?
I think
Probably, I
Friday.
guess so.
Oh.
So, yeah.
I guess
Well,
I'm
there
gonna
we
love
go.
This project has been awarded. So,
End the
Okay.
meeting, we're done, no changes, stop.
This helps us explain
yeah. No, right.
people, why did they put sod there? Well, it's just to hold the dirt for the winter,
Placeholder.
give us time to get used to it, come
Live
up with
with it.
ideas, live
Yep.
with it.
Yeah.
Send us your suggestions.
Yeah, and if I had a pointer, I would point to right there in front of Bluffington's, right where that bike rack area is. And that's one thing, I've gotten probably 5 questions already. It's like, because the old bike rack is sitting there. It's like, what are you going to put here? You're going to have tires sitting in some landscape bed? And then I said, no, it's going to be turf. Okay, thanks, never mind. But it's got to live with it. That's what they want to do. People say, that makes sense. I get it. So.
That's good.
Okay, I'm gonna keep moving. So I'm gonna move on to block 3 here. This is where the PNC Bank site was or is. And so this is, one of these green transitions to the neighborhood. We have lawn parkways. And so the goal is to protect the existing trees and fill new ones where we need to, keep the lawn parkways and keep the crosswalks high visibility. There are 3 gas-powered light poles here that would be replaced with village standard LED poles, just these 1, 2, and 3. And then we talked about this seating nook here where the Lake Bluff Library corner is. I think I've got, where is my enlargement? Let me get to that because it'll be easier to see. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead here. Here we go. This is the enlargement near the library. So here's the library. And so the intent is to make this widened seating area that would have the masonry seat wall. It could have movable tables and chairs, or just movable chairs. Spaces for some bike racks. We've got 3 in a cluster here. We've got a cluster of 4 and another cluster of 4. And then we were recommending adding another light pole here. So we've got new light poles at the north, a new light pole here at the south in front of the library.
What kind of lighting are you specifying? Do you have that picked out yet?
Just the same exact village standard LED light poles that are out there today.
Yeah, I think there's a budget issue, and we're gonna come and get that, but I think that we as a committee can still make a recommendation to the board that the lights, we're going to dark sky, we're hoping that's a plan.
Yes.
And so keeping the lights that we got there is really not something the SEC would like to have continue. And we can talk about the festoon lighting that you're putting in, but the general lighting should be all directed downward and should not be shining up. And so I think we as a board, or a committee, excuse me, would want to strongly include a recommendation tonight in our recommendations to the village board that those lights be replaced. Now, they may say, yes, that could be in the future, we don't have the budget, but it still comes from us.
Thank you. It's a great comment.
Time for a new standard.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent comment. Thank you.
Are those the last gas street lamps in Lake Bluff?
No, there's
No,
some,
there's one outside my house.
There's,
West Terrace.
but in
No,
downtown?
I'm in Bath and Tennis.
Are those the last ones in downtown?
There's not, I mean, there's fewer than 20 left.
Yeah.
And those lights are so bad. They don't even give up.
They
any
don't.
light.
They don't. You're
Awful.
right.
They're symbolic of light.
They are.
But I can
But
tell
they
you,
are-
you don't
I mean-
want the replacement.
Well, it's a reminder that the sustainability isn't just environmentally
I don't
speaking,
think we
Right.
even need it. Like, we just shouldn't even have it.
Yeah, and that's the point too, is it's one thing if we say we can't replace the upgrade light, but if we're installing new lights and we're replacing them with the wrong type of lights, we're installing wrong lights, that is just not forward thinking. I know then they end up, well, we put in this type of light and it doesn't match the other type of lights, but there are ways with shading to go. I've retrofitted a lot of downtowns, and I know there are different types of fixtures that look kind of like the old ones, but have shields on them. And there are custom fabricators that can make light any way you want to look. So I think it's something that ought to be looked at.
I was just going to ask that question. I think, I was curious if anybody had looked into retrofitting the inner part of the luminaire so that it would be downward without having to add
Yeah, you can do
a
that.
whole hood element.
Yeah.
But I mean, has that been looked at for these specific lights?
No, but it can be. And again, you don't have to
Yeah.
replace the whole pole.
Right.
There were people that would build something that goes on the top that has, even within the housing, internal to it rather than a hat on top of it,
Yeah.
to shut out the light. So there are a lot of, this is very common across the US, to take these old, but still keep kind of the old time look to them, but get them to the dark sky equivalent.
That would be so nice.
It would be great.
That's a great comment.
Girl
Yeah, no,
dream.
we appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, block 4. We already talked about portions of block 4 here. But the other items to talk about was, we found an opportunity to consolidate a couple of extra curb cuts here and add one parking space. I've got an enlargement that I can show you about that. And then also we have Scranton Alley, of course, is very popular. And there is this kind of additional old vehicular driveway space that has an opportunity to become a pedestrian walkway. We know that there's a lot of things happening with adjacent properties, and so it would need to be coordinated with the businesses, but we saw that as an opportunity to, kind of weave in another pedestrian route that ties in to the north-south connection. So here is an enlargement of that area. You can see Oak Avenue here. It's got that additional curb cut right here behind the church. And so we've just proposed closing that, and then we pick up another parking space in doing that. Okay, block one. So block one, we talked a lot about making better connections between the metro station and the downtown area. And we talked about calming traffic and expanding the north sidewalk by a one-way westbound traffic pattern. And I'll mention that the ABR and we looked at several different configurations for Scranton Avenue, and ultimately the recommendation by the ABR was to stay with the one-way westbound traffic pattern that is temporarily in place today. The complaints that we had heard was that, you know, people really love the outdoor dining that's on the south side of the street, but that they would like it to be closer to the businesses. It works better for operations of businesses, of course. It's nicer to have people closer to, you know, the service of the businesses.
Was
Other things,
Jody, was there any conversation about fully shutting it down? Because it's really not that nice to eat outside with cars going right by. I don't know. I've had a lot of people say, gosh, I hope it's flexible, or it's just even both blocks of Scranton shut down and being all pedestrian.
we did talk about that too. I mean, you know, it's a balance. I mean, you have so much right of way to work with and so many different uses that happen within there. It's, you know, it's cars, it's people, it's parking, it's fests sometimes. And so we think that we've come up with something that allows for a little bit of everything. Maybe I'll just get right into the enlargement here. So today what's out there is in the diagonal spaces, we have the tents. And what we are proposing is to take the tents out of there and to basically widen the extra space on the north side. So this sidewalk gets extremely wide. And so all of the outdoor dining gets moved to the sidewalk. This might be a better way to look at it. So here are a couple diagrams. The existing is at the top. So today we have eastbound and westbound drive lanes, and they're excessively wide. They're 14 feet. We've got 18 feet for the diagonal parking up against the park, and then we've got about 18 feet of sidewalk. The outdoor dining is occupying basically these spaces here. So the proposal is to keep just one-way westbound, keep the diagonal parking against the park, and then keep our 8-foot sort of flexible lane for parking. It's parking and deliveries, but then all that extra space gets given over to the sidewalk. So our sidewalk grows from 18 feet up to about 33 feet. So all that dining that is out there today in the parking spaces would be moved to this area.
Is that a net loss of space though for the dining?
It is probably a little bit of a loss. I mean, what we're showing is dining in this area. We've shown these large green planter areas. And so if we were to be truly providing the same amount of dining, we probably could consider expanding these green spaces to have even more dining. But, you know, we were trying to balance all of the different needs to happen out here. I'll mention too that the other thing that we've recommended is that this would be a curbless street at the north side. So the elevation of the roadway here would be the same elevation as the sidewalk here. And what that does is that during special events, it allows the village to have tents and kiosks and things that kind of spill right out onto the street. So there's more flexibility, and this whole thing could be treated with concrete. So it feels like it's sort of a plaza, like the same material as the sidewalk here.
Why are we using concrete and not a permeable material?
Yeah.
It hadn't been discussed, but we certainly could consider a permeable material. You know, we've
I mean,
seen those be
we're
just
not,
as
we're not even in
successful.
favor of more lawn and more concrete.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that I was going to ask is I mean, I like the idea of having the food be closer to the vendor. I get that. But I wonder how many people actually go up and eat on the south side because their kids can be running around in the park.
Right.
And they don't have to worry about a road or, you know, mommy, I can run back to mommy,
Right.
and there's that versus not. I mean, I just wonder if it's been successful on the south side because of accessibility for the children.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. One of the things, and we haven't gotten to it yet, but one of the other things that we're recommending for the perimeters of the park here are these other seating nooks. And so I could imagine that if there were families out there where parents wanted to sit and have a drink and let the kids run around, that function could still happen. The idea was that these would be movable chairs and would allow for some flexibility if they wanted to spin around and face the park or spin around and face the businesses, they'd have that ability to do so.
But the businesses aren't going to serve them there.
Yeah.
No, but if you were to take, to go or, just, have a coffee that, you brought with you.
I mean, if they were smart, they would, right? They already are walking their beers across the street, what's
Sure.
another 10 feet? I don't think any business out there is gonna be like, oh, forget it, we're not walking that extra.
I think the thing that
Maybe
where people run
liability
into, I think it's like, where's the busboy station and the dishes and all of that stuff is where it becomes problematic. So a couple other things that I'll just mention here. So, visibility was really important. We wanted to make this visual connection and this better physical connection between the metro station, the parking, and the downtown. So keeping this clear and open and wide was important. We're recommending enhancing the crosswalk with a concrete crosswalk across Sheridan Road, adding a bike shelter here for more bike racks, and then adding some lighting enhancements to the metro station, just to kind of further, signify that this is a special place. There is a lot of pavement here at the entrance, and so we're recommending a landscape median and a refuge island to cut down on the pavement and also to better define the space. We've got a couple of masonry seat walls similar to what we're replicating from the Village Hall in this area here, and then we've got these planting areas to, provide some more opportunities for greenery in downtown.
Jody, I had a couple questions. So about the bike shelter, so would that become then the primary bike place for commuters? Is that what that is?
We know that there already are some bike racks at the station, and we're trying to add more amenities to kind of bridge this gap between the metro station and downtown. And so it would just be another opportunity for bike parking proximate to downtown and proximate to the metro.
So what is that shelter?
So why a shelter?
What is a bike shelter? What is in there? Are there more bike racks? Is it like a big house?
Because, that to me felt like extra construction.
They have a shelter down at the Lake Forest train station. Some of you
Get
may.
used.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, all of the racks at Lake Bluff train station are sheltered as of right now.
Oh, those were nice.
Right. What we looked at one point, what we looked at one point was converting the racks that are now at the train station to secure racks, because we've had a lot of thefts at the train station.
We've lost three
Yeah.
stolen bikes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when Glenn and I and the committee looked at this in the past, taking out those old corral racks
Yeah.
and trying to put in secure racks, you can't get as many secure racks, as many bike spots with the secure racks as you did with the old corral style, right? So that left us with a shortage. So the idea of a shelter made sense as a kind of an additional
Spot.
place to put bikes, plus the opportunity that if you didn't want to necessarily put it right at the train station, if you were just going to the bar, you had a sheltered place to put it, because at this point, we didn't have anything planned for a year ago for downtown. So we were looking at this shelter as just an additional amenity for the racks. And I would go to the racks that I see 2 or 3 types. One is the secure type that you will not get your bike stolen if you have the right lock. 2 would be, I saw those movable, kind of temporary, let's move these out when we've got a Bluffinia or something. And then maybe more like the simple holders that we might have at rest areas or right outside the bar, right out someplace. But we also talked about, from a beautification standpoint, that some of the racks might incorporate art or the logo of the town, creating kind of that whimsy. Because I've seen some great downtowns where they've maybe too extreme for Lake Bluff, but, butterflies on the racks. But it could incorporate signage of the village, the kid and the dog, rather than these plain black racks. So I think that, that's something I push strongly for, is this kind of incorporation. And even the village, or even at the train station, all the secure racks don't have to have the logo. You could have the end caps have the logo. It just creates that messaging and that branding in town that I think works well. And I don't think I've seen that from the architectural board yet. And I think that would be a recommendation I would like to see.
But I guess, so is there a plan for better commuter bike? And we've talked about it, but is that a plan, or is this like a little bitty piece of that? I mean,
Flow, if you're going to go
It's
drinking,
just-
you want to be able to see your bike.
so this doesn't help commuters.
They're not gonna,
The
they're,
I mean,
shelter
I guess
helps,
at
the
Lake
shelter helps.
Forest, the shelter is kind of close to, like, it
Right.
feels like it is part of the
But
train station
but the budget for improving the
campus.
train station has not been addressed here. That's been a separate item, Drew, that they've been looking at, that's been in and out of the budget due to the pandemic. And I don't know where it stands right now.
There's some money in the budget this year. And I think I'm hearing you loud and clear, utilizing the secure racks at the train station where users are there longer than just grabbing something or a kid grabbing something,
Right.
quick, like ice cream cone or whatever. In those locations, make them the most secure that they can be. And then to the question about the utility of having this other rack, think of it this way too. People coming from the west side of town or coming in for farmer's market or something, they just set their bike there and walk over.
No, I enjoyed, sort of amused where you were showing the neighborhood comes in all from the north and the east, and as someone who lives on the west and comes, there's a lot of us over there
Yeah.
who access, it's not just visitors, it's how we access town as well.
That's true.
And where
So
you guys
I-
put your bikes, because I see it, at the farmer's market, where it's when you cross the street, right there leaning against those trees, right, you park underneath the trees
Yep.
in the northwest corner of the village green. That's where they go. And
I
so-
just was trying to see what's the overarching bike plan and how does this
And
fit in?
and I think that leads into a comment I've made before, is that I think we've addressed the train station. I think the shelter's great. But I still think that we've ignored bike paths all the way into downtown and a possibility of connecting to the lake.
I totally agree. There's nothing in that block 1 and block 2 for bikes to.
And we've
to-
extended the curb out 33 feet with concrete. We couldn't cut it back 3 feet and put in a bike lane. And
I have to disagree. I think it's just adding too much traffic into that small, narrow, cramped area. It is a pedestrian area, and I think throwing bikes into what are already blind corners and tight turns and busy traffic going through there, we are inviting accidents if we are trying to funnel more bike traffic through that area. I
But
think
the
the
bi-
bike
the-
paths
the-
are excellent places for bikes to go, and bike parking is an excellent idea for maintaining that walkability of downtown. But I think to add more traffic into what is already condensed and somewhat confusing could potentially be very dangerous.
well,
So the flip side also is you have a lot of kids and people riding bikes on the sidewalk, which is hazardous. I have a 93-year-old mother, and I'm always afraid she's gonna get taken out on the sidewalk.
God forbid it's a scooter.
So basically the way
Exactly.
we made this is you park at the train station and you either lock your bike there, or if you want to go to Scranton Alley and get some ice cream, you got to walk your bike.
Yeah.
And that makes no sense, that makes no sense to me.
It's 50 feet, it's 100 yards. There's also biking at the library as well, bike parking at
But
the
look, we've already
library
taken out half a road to put tables out on a concrete pad.
to support local businesses.
Right.
Yeah, but the biker's gonna support local business too.
We can certainly put signs downtown that say, walk your bike through downtown
It does,
if
it
that's a
doesn't
concern.
work, like, anyway, I work right in downtown Lake Forest, and also there's signs, they stencil it all, and no one cares.
no
They
one cares.
just ride. But, and I don't understand human behavior either, because if you sit at Bluffington's, you go around the corner, there's a big bike rack, but no one uses it. They want to, I don't know, see their bike? I'm not sure what the behavior is, but bike racks are tricky, to
They are.
get people to
And
use
we're
them.
also not talking just going downtown to shop and to go to Bluffington's with your bike. which I don't want to walk all the way to Bluffington. I'd rather ride somewhere where I can just park my bike directly and not have to get off, walk, get on, get on. And if I want to go with my kids to the beach, there's no real safe way. We have these wonderful bike paths all the way up to Target, down to the forest preserves. We have nothing to the lake.
Well, that's something different. I think that's a different discussion.
It isn't, because where's the path going to go from the train station to the lake? We're already tearing up the road. Now's the time to do it.
It's a
Plenty of
continuum.
opportunity to go through Artesian Park and have signage that goes through Artesian Park, down past the ravines, down Ravine Drive, making it very scenic and having potentially a quote-unquote bike route through Lake Bluff that leads directly to.
And we're already talking about putting in an additional future pedestrian path on that alley. Why not make that a bike path?
The pedestrian path in the
Brown, the block.
The brown.
in the narrow,
Where the-
in that
Yeah,
narrow.
it's great to look at how to use that.
So that, at least that is private property.
My opinion has been voiced. We can move on, however.
No, I want the committee to have a consensus on this because we're making recommendations. They may not be implemented or not.
So, two things, Jody, you probably can't see me, but would you talk about what we've talked about with experimenting with different bike racks, like by the Bluffingtons, that niche, that pizza slice in the corner at Oak, yeah.
Yeah, maybe people will be able to see their bikes there and then they'll park them.
Yeah, I mean, I can weigh in a little bit about bikes, bike racks. I mean, typically in downtowns, we're in, very tight generally urban spaces. And so we like to try and disperse as many bike racks in clusters throughout so that, it will be useful for bikers to lock up their bikes. I've witnessed the same thing. People, especially that ride like really expensive bikes, won't lock them up. Kids won't lock them up sometimes. But anyways, we've shown a couple of bike racks here near Bluffington's. We've got another cluster of bikes here by the post office. We've got a couple here on Center Avenue. There's a couple in this section here of Scranton. I mean, also a couple here, but we've tried to disperse them around.
Jody, and
will-
sorry to interrupt you, before you leave that slide, right where it says the motorcycle parking, see that?
Oh, yes. Oh, that's what you were asking about. I
Yes.
didn't hear you well. Yes, so this big striped area is shown as an opportunity for motorcycle parking because motorcycles are smaller than cars. Could also be a space for a lot more bike racks could fit into that area.
Especially the number of users we talked about, some of these cyclists come in on, their $15,000 carbon bicycle who don't want to, they want to be able to see it. I want to sit at Bluffington's and I want to look at it. So we thought, let's try it. Let's put, a rack system there that they can see and know that they can be 10 feet from and not have to worry about it. And it's a better use of the space, right? And so it's one of these where we can try and experiment with it and see if it works. And, and we can do that with relative ease and low cost. And if it doesn't work, we'll move it. But so that's what we talked about, kind of living with this, experimenting with it, and learning from it.
And I guess I could just add, I mean, because we've worked on projects that have bike lanes in downtowns. I'd be hesitant because when you do bike lanes, you have to think about both directions, of course. And so we have this unique situation where we have diagonal parking. There is an engineering standard that says if you place bike lanes behind diagonal parking, like we might have here, you have to add another 5 feet or 6 feet for clearance because it's kind of a blind corner.
What if it's in front of it?
I don't know. I'd be concerned about the potential visibility
What if it's
issues
in
next
front
to
of it?
diagonal.
What if it's in front of it?
Well, so when you're in front of it, there are other standards that come into play because you're looking at the overhang of cars and you're looking at people that are walking to and from businesses. So there's additional buffering that has to happen just to make for safe passage. Typically, what we've seen most successful in a downtown like this that is relatively small is, multiple modes in the same space. Everyone kind of watches out for one another. And I know that sometimes people are less respectful than others, but, once you get into adding bike lanes, you have to kind of think through all those other buffers that come into play, and it just ends up widening everything out. And I think we might lose kind of the quaint scale and character that everyone loves so much about downtown.
Okay, so going back to the outdoor eating, especially in Block 1, so we take away the tents, now it's all outdoor, so they didn't get to.
The north side of the street.
Yeah, so there's no opportunity for, winter
Shelters.
dining or,
No, well, the
mean-
Well, we
curb,
could still have tents if we
Yeah.
wanted to.
yeah, the curbless street
would allow for
would
that.
allow for that to spill over in the street to the comments you were making earlier, Member Twitchell, about, the idea of making this more permanent. I mean, by having this festival street concept, I mean, the village could find out that, it makes sense to close it down on the weekends. And it's gonna be closed off on the weekends. And the other, could you show the bird's eye view of this, Jody, and talk about
Yeah.
that flex lane? Maybe talk about that. You haven't said much about that one yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I do, I just want to mention really quickly, the thing about sidewalks that's important to us is we want to always make sure that we maintain a 6-foot minimum clear zone. So 6-foot minimum allows people who are walking side by side or passing one another with strollers, for instance, comfortable passage space. Beyond that, we could have tents up, year round if we wanted to. But then the flex lane, Drew, you were asking about the flex lane?
Yes.
Yeah, so sorry, let me get to that. Okay, so the flex lane. So this space in here, this is this kind of striped space underneath some of these labels. There are 5 parking spaces there today, and we're suggesting that they would stay there. It's 5 parking spaces. We could think about how they get striped, but it's a flexible space. It's parking spaces sometimes, it's delivery sometimes, it could be spaces for tents to spill out onto the street sometimes. But we wanted to provide this opportunity for just ultimate flexibility in the street.
I don't know how I feel about curbless. I like curbless, but I don't like curbless in a parking space.
So talk about the planters. And Mariette, I don't know if you've
Okay,
looked.
that would help.
Yes. And I don't know if anyone's been down to Fountain Square in Evanston. It's a curbless street on both sides of Fountain Square. And so where we have a flush curb, it's, elevation of the street is the same as the elevation of the sidewalk. We have to define the perimeter with other things to keep cars in check. And so what we have here in this area is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 big precast concrete planter pots. And these would be like 3 feet diameter by almost 3 feet tall. And so these would be robust enough to kind of define the edge of the street.
So like your best example of that today in Lake Bluff is Target,
Yeah.
right? They have the red spheres separating.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the right size.
All right, can we go back to the festoon lighting?
Sure.
And then we're going to go back to Co-Chair Renner's point about the connector, the bike way,
Yeah.
east-west.
Yeah, I want to.
I just think that, first of all, I remember what the downtown was like a long time ago. Nobody came downtown.
Right.
Since we've done these improvements, it's gotten more and more, and I think this is,
I voted it.
yes, no,
It was my fault.
yeah. I remember all the different designs we had for downtown at one point.
Sure.
Different architectural firms. I just think that this is going to make even more attractive. This is going to be a great thing for Lake Bluff. And as we bring more and more people down there, I really feel like as we make it more and more a destination, we're saying no to bikes, no to bikes, no to bikes.
Well,
And
and
the
the
racks
whole-
the racks are, okay, but to me, if I have to, having to bike all the way from the terraces over and then park it at the train station and walk, when I just want to pick up some burritos and take them home, to me, I'll just drive. Because I'm putting in so much time to lock up my bike to stop when I could just pull up. And I love the idea of a bike rack, say outside of other door that's just not secure. It's just, I'm just sitting in here because I can see it as I go in. But when you create that barrier, it feels to me, and kids in particular, I mean, adults are one thing, we can try and navigate the roads. But when you're having all these kids, especially coming down for the concerts and meeting their friends, and we just don't have a safe path away for them to get into downtown without parking far out, and they don't want to park far out. Everyone wants to have their bike near where they're going to be. for
And a
shopping.
big piece of our mission is to get people, I mean, the survey demonstrated that we're already pretty good about walking and biking, but we
Yeah.
want to encourage more of that. It's our duty, it's our responsibility with climate change to get people out of their cars. So
Yeah, I mean, in an ultimate viewpoint from that, it's like, everyone park at the train station, we're shutting that street down, it's pedestrians and bikes everywhere. And I know that, there's don't take away our parking.
Yes, yeah.
But I think part of the problem with the train station is that we don't have like a big sign that says free public parking.
That's in here.
Okay, so,
Yeah, because
Yes, that's here.
so to be honest, I didn't think you could park there unless you had a
Right.
bike permit as a
And,
commuter.
and if you had signs in
So
other
can
parts
you?
of
I
downtown
mean,
that
you
says
can.
free public parking this way.
Is that only for people with Lake Bluff stickers on their car, or is that to
No.
the general public?
It's been blocked off. Now it's
I
more
had no
clear,
idea.
that sign.
Put it up, Jody.
It's seriously free parking there?
Oh, the
Yes.
new sign?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I literally, till
It's
right
free
now, thought you
after really
couldn't.
11 a.m.
And on the weekends.
every
on the
day.
weekends.
That's not true today. It will
Well,
be
but-
soon.
Right now.
I mean, right now, you can just go park
During
there.
construction, it's been 100% free, right? That's been the case. There's a sign that's been out
Nice.
front ever since. But this sign, the idea is that, so our relationship with Metra is that we need to generate revenue from the lot, to support the Metra commuter station, and to make the payments on our lease. But the idea of Metra is totally fine with the or very early trains, people are in and out, and most people have already, if you're gonna commute, it's usually done historically by 10. So we come through, we verify that everybody's got the property, and then we're done for the day. So the idea that sometime around before noon, from the rest of the day on, it's a public lot, open to anyone.
So that's a new concept,
That is how it's worked always,
but not
but it's not been
explicit.
signed, and it's not necessarily, like right now, that there's, the actual laws on the books don't 100% jive with that, but that's the vision, and that's where we're going.
Got it.
Yeah, so the other thing is I remember being involved in Lake Forest train stations.
Okay,
And certainly in West Lake Forest, we had a lot of people coming from other areas to park there.
same with us.
Yeah.
Not necessarily locals on this lot, the east lot is, but that's okay. But it's obviously, in the world we're living in and COVID, office, who's going down to, the city with greater it's just not happening as often, right? So we don't know exactly how that's gonna shake out. We presume at some point it's gonna come back. Will it ever be to the peak that it was? Who knows? But we wanna take advantage of that infrastructure.
Are they all gonna stay home and ride their bikes everywhere?
Just like Brian said, yes.
I just want to add my 2 cents in. It seems like we're asking a lot of this block of Scranton. We want to eat, we want to park, we want to walk our dogs, we want to push the kids in a stroller, we want to ride our bikes. We want new lights, we want, permeable pavement. I think we have to choose our battles. So if it was have a bike lane or have permeable, I would pick permeable over that. If it was a chance for new lighting that was going to give us the dark sky and permeable, that would be great. I am used to, when I ride my bike, I don't think a thing of getting off at the train station and walking it in and parking it. It just, there's too much bikes. I mean, cars have a speed limit. There's no speed limit on a bike, and little kids are riding bikes. I don't see it safe. I think it's okay to get off your bike and walk down a sidewalk and park your bike. Lock your bike like you park your car. Ride your bike to the train station. You're gonna park your bike, you're gonna park your car, and then you're gonna walk. And then I think it's asking too much to put bike lanes on Scranton. But the idea of having a bike way, like your idea of a scenic route down to the lake, is a lovely idea because you can also walk it. It doesn't have to be bikes only. So I think if we kind of expand our thinking, and then really, if you had your choice, I would pick the lighting and the permeable pavement before a bike.
I agree with you, Mary. And
But I think that it's okay to have places where you walk. It's just, you can't always be on wheels and go wherever you want to go.
My issue with the bike lane is it would be a fundamental change to the flow, look, and feel of downtown Lake Bluff. A major impact on the way traffic flows through the downtown area. And
Like, we just did that. We just closed a lane and put tents out.
well, that was for extenuating circumstances, and I think
But now
that
we're
is,
making it permanent. We're already taking away car lanes to put seating, outdoor seating, which is great. And it is important for our businesses.
but I don't think it was a fundamental change to the way that
That street looks totally different today, and it will tomorrow.
Yeah.
Than what
it
used
will
to.
tomorrow because we're building it differently than it looked, but it still has the same spirit of how it once looked 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The bike lane itself, putting that in, all of a sudden you're talking about encroaching on the size of what Scranton Avenue actually is, and so in an already cramped street space, you're now cramping it even more. We've just pushed out all of these sidewalks, which means we're gonna be taking over more street in Scranton.
I think that the other issue with Scranton, I mean, I like the idea of getting a bike lane somehow, or encouraging people to be able to come into town on their bikes, just fundamentally. But you can't have traffic going west on Scranton in Block 1 and ride east. That's a,
Right.
it's a scarecrow issue.
So that's,
They call it salmoning, when you ride against the flow of traffic.
Salmon.
and I should mention there, I mean, that's, that you can engineer streets that way. There's a new, some
Chicago
new
does
lanes
it.
that went to Chicago that do just that, one-lane road.
The Glenwood Greenway is an excellent example of that. They've done a really nice job of taking a one-way street and having two-way bike traffic on there. If this were downtown Chicago, I used to ride my bike 14 miles one way into the city from Evanston. So I'm very familiar with just bike traffic, bike laws, bike lanes, especially through downtown Chicago. And if I thought that downtown Lake Bluff warranted that there were so many bike accidents going through downtown Lake Bluff that we needed it, then I would definitely be an advocate for it, but.
But
I'll
our goal
stop.
of this committee is to double, triple, quadruple the amount of bikes being used in Lake Bluff. And I just think that, and again, I don't want to just limit this to this downtown area, because we still don't have a safe path, like I talked about, to the lake, which is another kid's thing. My kid always wanted to go down the lake, and it's not safe. The shelter, I would have a kid, maybe, if that's lit and it's out on the lawn, park their bike there and walk in. I would not have them do it at night underneath the train station.
No.
So, I think,
He's a big
and again, a lot of the way that the downtown is, we talk about people sitting. Yeah, that's great, but a lot of people, myself included, want to come in, pick up their food and go home, and they don't want to take their car.
Right.
So, me being able to pull up to other door, I wanted to do that so many times. Just ride my bike to other door, screech up, throw the burritos in and go
But
home.
you don't have to find a parking space.
I mean, yeah, no one says you can't do that, like, just because a bike rack isn't there doesn't mean that there aren't gonna be
It's not a bike rack,
opportunities.
I don't feel safe when it's dusk out or dark. I do on the bike paths over that we have all established up and through everywhere, but not downtown, because there's no one on those bike paths except pedestrians, there's no cars, it's a safe lane. But I can't continue that zoom from the bike path out of the train station and into the downtown. I have to stop, I have to walk all the way over, and I realize if it's a event downtown, yeah, I mean, if it's Bluffini, just park it at the shelter that they're planning, fine, makes sense to me. But that kind of come in, get your groceries, go back home, doesn't work real well for that. It doesn't make it easy. And I think if we're reconfiguring the whole downtown, we ought to be thinking bigger. But that's just, we're getting late, I don't want to continue to push that. I want the committee to make a decision on this, and a couple items we talked about, the Permeable surface. We got to talk a little bit about the lighting, but I think that we ought to have a consensus as a committee what those priorities are that we'd like to see change.
That'd be nice, have a priority.
And if I could, just to help you focus and structure this conversation a little bit, I think you've been talking about a few different issues in a bundle, and they hang together, but it might be helpful to separate them. One issue is bike traffic through downtown. One issue is bike traffic in downtown. One issue is where bike parking is, and one issue is what that bike parking looks like, specifically what type of racks. We've been kind of bouncing among those different buckets.
And
in some ways they're
it's
separated.
outside of the scope, but the connection to the lake, and if that is, as mentioned, a completely different path for the town to get to downtown. But I just want to make sure that if we look at that subject separately, if we only would have got something in that little link, just one little part of downtown to connect, it would have helped us get to the lake. It's something the committee's been on their agenda for a long time, increase bike paths.
And I'll read a couple goals and then stop talking,
Okay.
but just as a refresher, this is from your adopted sustainability plan, so you recommended this, the board approved it. One goal is to continue to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian improvements in the capital improvement plan, especially in conjunction with road reconstruction. Doing that now. Another is to provide bicycle parking at municipal facilities in business districts and at key public destinations. Design public bicycle parking to meet professional standards for number, location, and type. And the last is consider encouraging or requiring commercial bicycle parking, just as automobile parking is required. Review bicycle parking standards as part of commercial site plan review. So, again, just to
Gosh,
help
we
your
were so smart back then.
thinking.
Yes.
Visionaries.
And then the other issue too, that we talked about, is the surface material construction, the making sure we accommodate the future native plantings instead of, or look at maybe an intermediate between that and just grass, turf. And then I suppose we want to talk about the lighting too. And we did talk about the lighting in the poles, and our recommendation for what we'd like to see with the retrofit and the new lighting poles. But I suppose we also need to talk about the festive lighting that they're planning and how that works with dark skies.
But also green materials throughout.
I just want to go back to one other thing. Right now, we have the dining on the south side of Scranton, and we're talking about moving it to the north side. I understand we have farmers market, and it'd be nice to have that space open. But I think a lot of people enjoy that type of dining because it's next to the green. I know we brought this up before, but it feels like you're dining on the edge of a park. And I think the feel will be very different if it's on the other side of the street next to buildings. I think that it's a beautiful, fun dining experience because you can come at it from a lot of different ways through the park to get there. So I don't know if that's a done deal, that it has to go from the south side to the north side.
Yeah, that's mostly driven by the merchants, right? Yeah, and
don't
we,
wanna
the
go
setup
across
that's there today was out of convenience to keep the bank lane open.
Yes.
Was also
Oh, yes.
was also the idea that during COVID and when this was installed, there was a lot of pickup, takeout food. So to have that quick pull in, pull out, just slide in, slide out to keep that lane open. We didn't know how well people would utilize the outdoor dining, but we thought if it's a hit, we want to be able to spill into the park, which happens from time to time, right? There's events that are so big that people just spill into the park.
Sure.
So what you guys talked about, what you talked about earlier, Marietta, is that there's a lot going on here, but that's part of it, the key to design it, it's flexible enough to let it work, right? That's what the ABR talked about, is like, we don't know what the future's gonna hold. We sure know that flexibility is gonna be key. So if we can plan for that, then maybe that's the best we can do, right? So that's a lot of the thinking.
I get it.
So of all the things, my list here from you all thus far, in terms of a recommendation, would include, consider changing the light standards to, or amend them to reflect dark sky standards. Consider permeable pavers for Block 1 surface at Festival Street. Utilize secure racks at the train station. Consider village logo on said racks throughout. Consider native plantings in lieu of sod in the green areas. And then this concept of study, is there a connection for east to west bike or pedestrian connections to the lake? Is it a pedway? Jody, you and I had a conversation because Co-Chair Renner brought this up, and we talked about this. You had, your planning expertise in other communities. You talked about ways that this has been implemented, similar concepts. That's your cue.
I was waiting for you to, what were you, tell me.
Well, you had talked
specifically, what
about
were
that
you-
people have done it like as exactly how Member Cole has described, about the idea that where it's been done with, signage or painting the pavement or other ways, but not necessarily through a CBD, but near or adjacent to on a nearby street that may have lower volumes of traffic or,
Oh, low-stress bike routes?
yes.
No, bike
Yeah, and
ways.
so,
No, bike ways.
Bike ways, bike lanes.
Thank you for stating it as such. I would be fine with recommending a study be done on how best to incorporate bikeways into traffic with the current and proposed traffic flows.
Yeah, and so that could be, just further analyze it. And this is a concept plan, right? I think it's likely that some of this will get attacked sooner rather than later. The board's talked about this. They like what, north side of, but to be honest, they are struggling with, one-way, two-way. That's still an issue and trying to get that right. The good news is that the village has had an experience of testing it one way,
Yep.
and it's been a good experiment. There are unforeseen circumstances where we understand that people are using the rear of Block 1, that, parking lot behind Block 1 is a cut-through.
Yeah.
We've heard that there have been
Is
people.
that private?
It is private.
It is.
The Walnut people are making
Oh, yeah.
the illegal turn on,
Watched it today twice.
yeah.
Has there been thought to making the one-way more of an eastbound instead of a westbound? Because that truly is the main entrance, the main roadside entrance into downtown Lake Bluff.
That was talked about last night at the other meeting, is like, is this, it may be just a very simplistic comment, but are we making it slightly more inconvenient for people to get there?
Yeah.
And I think some of the comments that were given were, look, our goal is to make this a destination, right? We want people to come here and stay here, and a lot of people do, right? And so the idea is, it's not that far away to make a loop to come around.
True.
And the concern is, there's the volume and speed at which cars travel in Sheridan is higher, much higher than east of there.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So, and then if we funnel people the opposite way, that we control that valve better. And and the idea that the ABR, they talked about this a lot. It's, they feel like the one-way street is, going back to the original goals identified that Glenn read off, is the better way to help elevate pedestrian safety.
Well, in that case, why not shut down the whole road and have them park at the train station?
I think that's the balance of trying to recognize that there's businesses that want to have
You should have people
parking.
walk downtown.
Yeah,
I just think it's funny that.
yeah, well, there's businesses that are disappointed the village didn't make from the main living room east, this block that's being worked on now, Block 2, one way, because you could have picked up 9 stalls. Right, so there's people that were like, I wish you did that. But, this plan, it's a net increase in parking, but only by a few. But they were like, that was an opportunity. And there's other places in town that we've shared this with the PCCBA and the village board and the ABR. There's other locations, but they all have warts. It's like you're gonna take out trees to do that, or you're going to, now you're putting more people on North Avenue, and so there's always trade-offs.
Yeah, and that is increasing.
Yeah, and you guys are you feel, every farmer's market Friday and every, the bike race, special events, that's where people go, because, hey, I can see it. I can just, it's really short. It's close by.
That then just needs to become one way till Evanston.
As someone who lives there, you would like that?
Absolutely, I would like that.
Really?
Between,
Well.
it's crazy. I saw somebody coming out Oak.
Wrong way?
Yeah, and then they're trying to come down North Avenue to go
Yeah.
west. And there's too many cars parked on the north side. That's when I called you. I was like, what the hell?
Yes.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
And of course, they were directing them down
Yeah.
Oak, which is wrong. Anyways.
Short-term pain during construction.
Anyways. Yeah, I
So-
think something needs to happen.
So on a totally different subject, Jody, I was hoping you could explain the fire pit concept to me. That seemed like not necessarily an energy thoughtful idea, so just wanted to understand
Sure.
that. And safety, you know, a lot of kids around. It just sounded like sort of looking for trouble, so just wanted to understand it a little better.
Make sure
Yeah,
there's a
one of, so,
recycling bin
one of the
by-
thing, and just like you've heard so far, this is a concept. One of the things that we heard early on in some of the polling that we did was folks were asking for things like fire pits. So what we had shown was that, you know, these seating nooks could have, you know, a table in the middle, a planter pot in the middle, or these orange dots could be potentially something like a fire pit. We did a little bit of research, and let me get to it. Here. So these seating nooks, people liked the idea of them having things like Adirondack chairs. They could be the Lake Bluff blue. They could be movable. In the center of them could be something like a fire pit. This is an example of a custom build in Homewood in their Streetscape. It's a gas-powered fire pit. It has a lid on it so that people can't get so close to hurt themselves. It's controlled by public works staff. I will say that the ABR recommended not to have a fire feature. They felt that it was something that, one, not very sustainable. They didn't like the idea of running additional utilities, you know, gas to power these things. We all agreed that a wood-burning fire pit in downtown was sort of out of the question for several reasons. So that's kind of the history of the fire pit. You know, it sounded like even when we went to the village board that fireplace was not something that was desired. So we kept it in the presentation here just for the purposes of discussion. But, you know, I think the recommendation would be seating nooks with Adirondack or other casual type seating with, you know, could have a feature in the middle like a table or no feature at all. I think these would be one of those things that could be tested over time because it doesn't require a foundation or anything like that.
In the committee last night, the new business advisory committee, they talked about this and they said, you know, one of the things that the village can do that they felt like Lake Forest did a good job of having is this, you know, public-private partnerships or opportunities to donate like some sort of, like if somebody said, you know, I'd like to create a seating nook with certain, you know, using these forms, Adirondacks that say, you know, this is like, you know, a gift by a family for the downtown, people who, you know, who maybe have a loved one that enjoyed the downtown and wanted to have that gift and provide that and maybe be like, you know, a place for people to gather. And so they talked.
The bench and tree program.
Yeah.
Exactly, but more like this kind of, you know,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
yeah, so they said that'd be an opportunity that the village should consider.
What we did at an urban park up in Wauwatosa was we did permanent bench furniture. Some of it was like you would have in a patio, but it was made of a permanent structure. And underneath the seams, it had LED strip lights. So it was not a dark sky concern, but it created a safe lit space, kind of give it that warmth where people could go there in the evenings and have beers, and that's just a simple wire underground.
Wauwatosa
cool.
CBD? And ah, yeah,
Yeah, I was
Sounds
the
cool.
electrical engineer on that.
no kidding.
That sounds cool.
That was one of the inspirations for this.
Yeah.
I drove.
Yeah, we know the Wauwatosa CBD. That's really cool.
Yeah. I was up there for a baseball tournament. I said, would I land in Belgium? Where am I? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and we did a lot of things with, we put in power for a band area, so
Yeah.
that there was a permanent location. The festoon lighting that we put in, I had them use aircraft cables because someone said something about boys hanging off things. So we made them extra strong so they couldn't, or someone having a few beers didn't decide to.
Yeah, Wauwatosa is a great like opportunity to, if you've ever been up there, to check it out. They have just about every type of streetscape amenity or parking. They have back-end angled one-way parking.
Yeah.
Back end angled.
I don't
Yes.
even know what that means.
Where you back in at an angle on a one-way street, so you would back, and it works. It's supposed to be really efficient,
Wow.
right, Jody?
Yeah, every time I bring it up, my engineer's head spin around.
And I'll say too, it's actually, that treatment was being put in Kansas City 5-6 years ago, and it's reduces accidents a lot because you look when you're pulling out of the
You really
parking
look like, what am I doing?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and it's,
Takes some getting used to.
it's in Driggs, Idaho, too.
Yeah.
So, it's coming to a theater near you. All right, let's go back to the festoon lighting.
Here we go.
Festival
I
lighting.
heard stainless steel aircraft wire. I just wanted to mention that the festoon lighting that's specified for Block 2 also does have the stainless steel rope, and then the wires get clipped to that. But we agree that that is certainly a best practice when it comes to installing these things.
Yeah, how do we get to dark sky? Do we have ordinances with this, in terms of how long it can be on?
You do not.
Has to go off.
No, it is, we talked about, remind me, Jody, I know we don't have a dimmer, but we do have a timer.
To be honest, I'm not sure how these are being controlled. I think that they're wired into the same wiring system as the street lights, but I don't know enough about the controllers.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's the understanding, that there is a controller, and the idea, we talked about trying to have a dimmer, but that was not possible because the spec lights don't have that. And maybe Brian, you can take a look at that, but
I can take a look at it. I mean, timers are great, photo sensors are better, because timers get off.
As is the example
Yeah,
by.
like when we did the lighting, the exterior lighting at the fire station, the new energy codes, because that's functional lighting, had to have a photo sensor, had to have a timer, had to have, it dims down to a certain, thing. We did the same thing at the water treatment plant, we're looking at the controls for that. Festival lighting is not considered as much. Now, when we look at the model lighting ordinance here, we will be looking at festival lighting and residential, architectural, landscape lighting. But
I mean, this is definitely done, I mean, this is the
yeah,
opposite
the
of dark at night,
controls,
right?
you can do all sorts of things with controls. I think the temperature of the lights is something that has come up in sustainability, in terms of wildlife, using a certain temperature color. The heads themselves, there are all sorts of different heads that can help minimize how much light's coming out versus down. And I understand this is festival lighting, but we certainly don't want to create something that's, gonna glow from the rest of Lake Bluff, right?
So I can share that the product that was specified, and we haven't yet dialed in exactly which color temperature, but the color temperatures that are available, I think range from 1800 Kelvin up to 2700 Kelvin. That's
Okay.
the whitest. And so we've requested that the contractor provide us samples so that we can review them before we make a final selection. There are frosted glass is one option, or clear glass is another option, which helps a little bit with the dimming. And then, you mentioned something else I wanted to mention. Oh, this particular product does offer, they're like shrouds or hoods, like little lantern tops. And so, that is something that is available. So you're not looking at the bulb, but it's, it's got a little, a little housing that it sits in. So those are available as well.
Okay. I can take a look with my lighting designers too, and just, if you want to,
Sure.
if you have any information.
You'll have it tomorrow.
Yeah, I could tell you the name of the product that's specified is called Celestial Lighting.
Okay.
And we're happy to share that through Drew if
Okay,
you'd like
yeah.
to see the specs.
Okay,
I have a question. Does this festival lighting, will it be on every day of the week?
yep.
All night,
Not all night,
but every day.
that's the plan.
Or
Well,
not through the winter?
In the dusk.
Yeah,
In the winter too?
why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Monday,
Nobody be out there.
nobody be out there, yeah.
Well, I mean, they were this year.
If you have tents and heaters, you can be outside for a long time.
That's a good question. I mean, with the tents versus open seating, I'm assuming we're going to permit heaters from the restaurants outside, propane?
Yeah, it's allowed currently, yeah.
Just thinking from a carbon standpoint,
Yeah.
like along the lines of the fireplace, the more gas we're burning outside, the worse it is for the environment.
I mean, it's-
Electric heaters might be an option. I know they take a lot of power, and I know it's not as efficient as gas, but it doesn't burn carbon.
I mean, the same goes with lighting every day, all night. I mean, even though they're LED lights, just the energy burn plus the light pollution is it
Well,
worth the glowing orbs in the sky that look pretty when we walk down, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Just something
well,
to call
once,
out
once
on
you've
phone.
got a sophisticated controller on there, we could look at, what days, what seasons, and program it that way. I mean, it's a lot better than it used to be. We just had a little dial that clicked.
So those would be our recommendations, right? of
I
taking-
think a sophisticated control system that could be adjusted. I'll look into the dimming with these different
And how about
manufacturers.
the top,
The shield,
the
yeah.
hood?
I'll look
I
at
think
that too.
I could get behind festival lighting if there was a hood that didn't shine up.
Right.
And everything else about
I'd
what
have to-
makes sense.
I'd have to look at, with every fixture type head, you get a spectral thing that shows, and we could look at the different,
Is that it?
And where are the proposed places for the lighting? Is that
Good question.
just?
Sure, so the festoon lighting is shown,
So it's a shield
at this
all over?
location here, it's Center and Scranton, so
Innovasi and then
Oh,
Kitty
that's not
Corner?
Innovasi and then
that's
B
not
Market.
bad. Is there,
Yep.
And then
And
over the
those are
train
the-
station, Jody, we talked about the
It's
train
got the hood
station
on
too.
it.
We did, yes, so at the train station, at the building, although
Yes,
I will
that.
mention, Glenn
Why-
was smart
why-
enough to,
Why would you have it at the train station?
So at the train station, but in the new bike shelter.
share that in a minute.
To
yes.
unify the two places.
To connect visually.
Visually.
I get that.
But
We-
also,
I don't know. The lighting, it feels like this is where I'm gonna have a drink and my dinner and stuff. It seems odd to me that it would be around a bike shelter.
Except for you don't want to walk into the shelter.
It can be
No, but you
motion
could have a
sensitive, though, right?
light. You
Oh,
could have a light.
motion
not-
sensi- motion
Yeah, we
sensor
could light
would
the
be
shelter
lovely.
without having the festoon, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and there's different types of lighting we could have in the shelter too.
But again, the visual link between those two spaces for people, yeah.
Yeah, originally you talked about going underneath the porte cochere, right, trying to visually connect it because it's open and, there's lighting there now.
I mean,
But isn't it enough if they're just across from each other? It's just anchoring that center of town.
can you show the pedestrian walkway, or is there any proposed lighting that's gonna be in that? Because I know it's kind of like a dark, like where the new proposal is, not necessarily where Espresso is, but it's fairly dark there.
That
So
part-
in the sidewalk area
Oh,
on
no.
Block 1?
Are you talking about west of Sheridan
Jody's,
Road?
Jody, member Cole's talking about like the extension of the Prairie Espresso Alley. So that was actually out of scope for Jody's study because
Oh,
that's
okay.
private property.
Private.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and we hadn't yet started to we didn't look at light placement in that area.
Not necessarily by Espresso, but I know we proposed linking.
That's all private property as well.
Okay, okay.
Could we share, Glenn's got a picture of the festoon lighting and I think it's worth bringing up on the screen.
Yeah. Jody, for your reference, this is the Copenhagen submittal we were discussing a little while ago.
Oh, sure. Do you want me to?
No,
It's the
I got you.
same as, it's the same product as my photograph. Right.
So this is the open bulb, but if you scroll down, this is the one with the
This,
option
yeah, the
with
third
hoods.
page has those shrouds, so.
Yeah,
And they only have these two options, but it's an option.
I think either of those would be much better. The shroud would be ideal for uplight
Yep.
versus the dimpled cans. But I think that would be a very
much
nice, yeah.
So what's that called?
A hood.
The standard canopy.
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 A covered celestial.
Well, Jody, thank you so much
Do
for
we
your
have to choose
patience.
the bike rack? Do we have to what do we need
Not
to?
at this second.
Okay. Fine.
The good news about the bike racks is those just get set on concrete or bolted to the surface, so they don't require big footings or anything like that. They're the easiest to add later. And I think we talked about this earlier, but we found that when downtowns test different concepts, get a couple of different bike racks and see what works, that usually goes a really long way before you commit to buying a bunch of them.
Great.
Okay, we've had a very long meeting tonight. I appreciate everyone's time. I'm sorry that this went on, but it was some good discussion.
That's a big plan.
Huge plan.
I want to say that despite our debate on some of the issues, I really like this plan. I really like where we're going overall with this. And I think this is going to be wonderful for the town.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great notes.
Thank you. We really appreciate you all taking the time to think through it with us. I think the more folks we talk to, the better the plan gets. So it's appreciated on our end.
We appreciate your patience with our debate for sure, and the hard work that you've put in already and staying late with us, so thank you again.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Item number 5, village staff report.
Yeah, we'll keep this very quick. So again, we will see you here again next Thursday night to talk about the sustainability plan. A bit of housekeeping. So another one of Jody's numerous projects here in town. Your landscape playbook, you'll remember we bid that work out and awarded it to Pizzo and Associates to do the clearance of all that buckthorn north of 176. We're expecting now they'll be starting about 30 to 45 days from now, start of January. So stay tuned. Very exciting stuff.
Excellent.
I'll also mention too, thinking of our scheduling for future meetings after next Thursday. It's always been intended that this group would have a lot of the staff liaison work done by the village's administrative intern, Sam Lennick.
Oh, yeah.
And currently, her class schedule hasn't allowed that. Going into next semester, it'll be more, she won't have as many nights at UIC, and she'll be able to work with this group more, which is something that's desired in a lot of different ways. No offense, always happy to work with you, and I'll still, I think, be participating for a while yet as you work through some stuff, but we want to give her that experience, want to give you guys more resources as you're doing your work. Specifically though, and we can talk about this more at your next meeting, we're looking at least for the first half of 2022, setting your regular meeting dates. We would suggest the third Tuesday of each month. So by way of example, that would be January 18th, February 15th, March 15th, April 19th, it's my birthday, May 17th.
Somebody bring a cake.
And you'll see a list of those dates at your next meeting because we give notice of those on your behalf a year at a time.
Nice.
So just please look at your calendars. If you can, mark your calendars, and we'll go from there.
The January date was the 18th.
Yep. Big day.
Yes. I don't know what's significant about today.
Just, I already know. Nothing at night. I've got a bunch of stuff during the day.
Thought I was missing a holiday or something.
I wish.
That would conclude our
Okay.
report.
All right, members report. Would any of the members like to discuss or bring up any item or?
When are we
News.
gonna serve cocktails at these?
Yes.
That would? Yeah. Especially when they're 4.5 hours long.
Yes. Co-chairs report.
Nothing from me.
In terms of sustainability, there's a big push in the industry I'm working in right now to convert generators, which are being used a lot due to power outages all over the country, to more sustainable fuels. And I know that some of the manufacturers of natural gas generators are now looking at hydrogen. The problem with hydrogen is we don't have the distribution system for it yet. There's discussion maybe in the future that we might convert some of our natural gas lines to hydrogen, or there might be more of a network of distribution of hydrogen. Of course, people are concerned about the explosive potential, but it burns very clean. and allows for microgrids to be developed when you install a generator. If it runs on hydrogen, you can just run it, other than the noise issues. They're also looking at new forms of biodiesel made from vegetable oil that can run in diesel engines. So that's a nice thing that they're starting to look more on. But again, it's production of this type of fuel system and distributing it across the U.S. instead of just gas and petrochemical. So I thought that was kind of fascinating that they're moving towards that.
Is there any plan for the village to be 100% renewable energy by X amount of date, 2050? You know, running
Nice
on
thing to have in the sustainability plan.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I know that,
electric cars, stuff like that.
yeah, there's municipally, I know that particularly on the West Coast, with the use of mandating the use of solar is one of the ways that they're achieving that. I think solar is viable, but not as viable on the West Coast as it is here for a complete carbon replacement. I know that some businesses, Google, for example, claims to be carbon neutral by supporting the development of solar and wind elsewhere.
Purchasing
where they-
credits.
Yeah, purchasing, but not just, but actually investing in the building of those. So
Yep.
I don't know, Drew, if you want, I know that we've,
We don't need to make that plan tonight.
right,
I just
That's
wanted to
next,
ask the
that's the next
question.
meeting.
well,
Yeah.
we've looked at that. We've looked at purchasing recs, the ability of residents to buy clean energy for their homes has been something that's been
Yeah,
tossed around for a while now.
yeah.
I think the other thing too, the local garden clubs between Evanston to here are looking at, Garden Club of America garden clubs, are looking at getting rid of leaf blowers altogether. Evanston apparently,
Well,
Yeah.
gas, I mean, they could be electric.
Yeah. The
Or
bat-
you mean 100%?
100%.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think Evanston is going 100%.
Even battery ones?
that's amazing.
Why, the noise?
I think they will make they'll make the change, but I don't know if the behavior will actually change or if they'll actually
Well, it's
enforce
gonna
it.
cost, I mean, to have somebody rake versus not, but, yeah.
There's a meeting
So offensive.
in a couple weeks. President Charlotte and I are attending with the North Shore communities talking about that issue.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just, it's hard, because
I mean,
if
you can
you're,
have-
if you're doing it yourself, you might have to do it on a Sunday, but it is 24/7 here.
24/7. Oh,
And I mean, the village has talked about this issue multiple times and, you know, amended the regulations from time to time. And there's different communities that have responded to resident concerns that have been uncovered during COVID, you know, when people were home, when they weren't home normally, like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Is this, you know, and so they've been trying to like work away from it. There's, because actually, Sam, our intern, was monitoring this, because that's one of the assignments we gave her, is, hey, watch what's happening. And there was a community in Florida that was like, okay, from now on, Sundays, no more blowers. Okay, next year, no Saturdays. And they're just kind of walking away from it and just saying, okay, you're losing, your window is closing when you can use them. And there's been seasonal bans have been done in a lot of areas.
It'd be interesting because I know, I've been looking at an electrical lawnmower. And I know that the sound, a couple people in our neighborhood, I've walked by and they're mowing the lawn, I can hardly tell. But I would be interested to know if the sound decibel of the leaf blowers that are electric are still bad.
Higher
Still
register, yeah.
high.
I haven't heard them, so I
Still
don't
high.
really know.
I mean, it's the turbine that's making the noise, not just the internal combustible engine, so you need to be able to generate that land in the electric. Doesn't make as much as the gas-powered one, but they're still noisy.
But it's not as much a reduction as the lawnmowers.
I do know that things like this will definitely put a lot of landscape businesses, they will lose a lot of money because of it, and people will probably lose jobs because of it. I personally don't have one, don't use one, don't even incorporate a landscape
because they're gonna
service.
have to rake, they're gonna need more people.
Yeah.
But they're gonna lose the amount of accounts that they'll be able to handle because the time that's saved with
Again,
the blower.
it'll come down to, is it important to me?
Yeah, exactly.
To have that done.
Right.
I also think that somehow we need to get to a little more policing on the grass clippings and leaf going into the ravines. I was touring a house recently, and it is just a complete abuse.
Egregious.
If you see it, let us know. I mean, the fly, we had, for whatever reason this year, people putting pumpkins.
Down the ravines.
Yeah, we gotta go clean it up and say, hey, if somebody sees somebody, let us know. I don't understand people doing, why they do that, but
I mean,
Yeah,
is there
that's-
a way to have somebody walk the ravines? Could we have a nice little intern doing that in the summertime?
well, to me, it's something like, it's something that we can certainly alert our officers to, but I mean, we already, we've written people up cited people for fly dumping before. Now, the ravines, I haven't heard, but like people have done it for a long time in the West Terrace into the village's property, going back that direction towards the 10 acres between Jawa and the West Terrace.
Jeez.
That's been a common issue there,
Dumping.
yeah. But I haven't heard people doing the ravines,
Oh, man.
Well, just swinging back to the leaf blower again, we know that the landscapers do what the customers ask. So I don't use leaf blowers
yeah.
ever, because, and everybody knows that we don't do that there. So I don't know how you enforce that. I think it has to come from the owners
Sure.
to say, don't blow leaves on my property anymore, instead of making a law that says no one's allowed to do that anymore. So there's a public education piece to that. And the other, from a gardening perspective, is that the falling leaves are called litter is really kind of an oxymoron, because they're very valuable. For this idea of blasting every leaf and twig out of your flower bed is kind of old school thinking. Those leaves need to stay intact and go right on the beds.
Yeah, if you just leave them on, the grass or the flowers or whatever, it's the decomposing leaves are gonna help and make your plants healthier. It's like a
Exactly.
natural fertilizer.
That's
And there are a lot of beneficial insects that lay their eggs on the backs of leaves, so even mulching leaves is kind of going out of favor. So there's a public education piece to teach people, no, don't use a leaf blower here. It's not just because it's loud, it's because it's really not necessary. I mean, we didn't grow up with leaf blowers.
Especially on the smaller in-town properties.
Right, or blowing the leaves into the woods where you've got a tree and it's 2.5 feet high with leaves all around it. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm not sure how to solve that leaf blowing thing. No leaf blowing on Sunday would be a great start.
Yeah.
Because
we-
right
when-
now, our ordinance, you can have as many as 3 people on your property, all blowing leaves at the same time.
Right. And that came to, when the board talked about it last, the idea was that they can get in and out faster, right? Do you want to hear it for an hour, or do you want to hear it for 5 minutes? You tell us, and so it's, that's kind of how the board went through that process. But at the same time, when they were doing it, they had a lot of the bigger companies that provide landscaping services in our area came and were willing to pledge that they would use it less and like spend weekends doing more planting activities, like either putting a shovel in the ground, which isn't loud.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they signed a pledge to do that. And part of the problem with that is that's great, but there's more mom and pops out there doing services than the big groups. And so
You
it
can always
really,
find somebody
Or-
to blow leaves.
Dads who work 40, 50 hours on the weekend who are just trying to get the lawn done on Saturday so that they can go to soccer games. When we start getting into the regulation of individual citizens' lives, it becomes a slippery slope and telling people.
Thanks, we're all wearing a mask, though.
so the village, thinking about that exact example, said if you're a business providing services, your time is this. This is the window of time when you can operate. If you're a homeowner doing it, your window is this.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good sell.
So
It has to come from the owner, the homeowner, to say, we don't do that.
it's an education issue, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, but that's the very hot topic right now on the North Shore. Everywhere.
Things are changing with people at home more.
Yep.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Oh, we almost made it to 11.
No, that's, that
that's
clock's off.
clock.
That's
an hour up.
an hour ahead.
All right. Okay,
Oh, no,
second?
I'm fine.
You've got a second for
Second.
Nicole.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Usually to adjourn, you just need a motion.
How many times did you look at that clock and then check?